Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you all can hear me. Hope I'm coming through okay. I would be very happy to get like little thumbs up in the chat so that I know that that you all are able to hear me. Let me know if that's okay. Looks like I'm live and looks like there's a few people watching already. Well, welcome. Just to give you all a preview of what we're going to talk about today. This is our weekly Monday 5 p.m. stream, which we do every Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, in which I'm happy to take any and all questions that all of you might have. So you can ask me anything. A lot of what we do on this channel is engage on the cusp of the atheism versus theism argumentation, or perhaps atheism versus Christianity. And so that's what we've done in the past, but I do have some discussion questions that we can start off with if you all are interested. So if you're interested, you can join the chat. You can ask me your questions. You can ask me questions about atheism, about theology, about philosophy. You can ask me about my main contribution to this space, which is the CTF argument. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions on any of those topics. Good to see you all. Nice to see you today. I should, before I dive into the content that I've prepared for today, I did want to just briefly mention I was running a pretty bad fever last night and today. Didn't keep me from going to work, but I'm like sweating bullets now as my fever is breaking. So if you have any questions, if I say anything that's a little weird, that's a little loopy, just please keep in mind it may be the fever talking and not me. All right, well, good to see you all. Nice to see you on day 3. Nice to see Macintosh Pro. Good to see you. Darklight, also nice to see you as well. I know you've got a book coming out. I hope that you'll consider hopping up and talking more about that. Truth or Religious Nonsense is here as well. I hope you'll consider hopping up and talking about the discussion that you had on Saturday on your channel. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. It looks like Dr. Kurt is going to be going over the CTF argument on a stream. I don't know whose stream that is, Dr. Kurt, but I'm happy to hear more about that. If you don't already know, the CTF argument is my comparative theological framework argument. It's an argument that that I make. Make sure you test for COVID. Okay, yeah, we hopefully it won't be that. Oh, Skeptic Philosophy. Okay, all right, yeah, that's a really great channel. So Dr. Kurt is going to be discussing some of my ideas on the Skeptic Philosophy channel. I'm eager to hear about that. Max, no, we can chat. I'm happy to do that. And I know BBN has been on here in the past. He's another atheist. It sounds like he's going to be coming up later. I also wanted to do a little bit of a debrief on the conversation that we had with a lot of LDS folks. I did a 5-hour stream. Oh, and I guess Random Catholic is here too. Random Catholic, yeah. Good to see you. Yeah. And Darklight, if you want to talk about your new book, I'm actually curious to hear more about that. I missed a big chunk of your presentation that you gave on the Objective Ethics channel. So if you want to hop up and have a little conversation with us about that, the link to join should be on the stream right now. So feel free. Yeah, 5 hours was really insane. That was a bit too much to be thinking about LDS for 5 hours straight. I would agree with you there. But thanks to On Day 3 for hosting that conversation. That was really wonderful. He was kind of restreaming it to my channel, but I really appreciated that. It was a really nourishing conversation. If you don't already know, On Day 3, he has a really wonderful channel. I would definitely 100% encourage you all to like, comment, and subscribe on that video. I'd love to know more about what you think. I think on my channel, that 5-hour video has something like 500 views, but it also has about 100 comments. Good to see Chris as well. Good to see you, Chris. Nice, glad that you're here. Dr. Kurt is saying if you want to have a go at the LDS argumentation, would that be welcome? Only if you like and subscribe. Sure, that's always appreciated. Thanks for the promotion, Dr. Kurt, and I hope you'll hop up a little bit later too. All right, well, we've got Seth Scales up here, who has some interesting ideas on the topological nature of the universe. I'm kind of eager to get into more of the weeds about that. And Darklight says they're busy right now, but if you're interested later, Darklight, feel free to hop up. I'd love to hear more about your book. We'll talk more about that. All right, well, let's bring up Seth Scales because we had a bit of a conversation on the Objective Ethics channel, which is a really great channel, and I was on there on a Sunday, and I missed a lot of the conversation. But Seth Scales, I'm glad you're here. I'm curious to get more feedback on your ideas. Maybe you can delineate some of the points that seemed a little bit fuzzy to me. And maybe if you want, you can explain your argument, and we'll just go through the people. I know there's some people already lined up in the queue, but we'll try and get through people fairly quickly. But good to see you, Set Scales. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so it's good to be on here. I've never been on. That was the first time I talked to you yesterday, but yeah, it seemed interesting. But basically, what I do is I combine the topological unified field theory by Jenny Lorraine Nielsen, who is a physicist at Kansas, with the topological metaphor by Joseph P. Farrell, who is a biblical scholar and historical scholar out of Oxford. So basically, both these things, they use topology to explain the universe. One of them does it from a quantitative framework and the other a qualitative. And so I take them and put them together in one syncretic framework of my own that I call the unified topological ontology. And basically, existence is made up of, if according to the topological metaphor, the primordial, which is a substrate that is ever present everywhere and basically contains all things, and all things come from it. And then within the topological unified field theory, this would be total space, which is represented by S9. And then from here,
let me just back up a second, because I'm more familiar with the topological unified field theory. So I'm more familiar with that. But if you want, Joe, the other analogy that you were, the analogous analysis of the topological unified field theory, so it was provided by Joseph P. Farrell. Now, I've read his arguments, but maybe you could explain what his arguments are specifically and how they relate to topological unified field theory. And I'm familiar with topological unified field theory, but if you want, you could explain that for the audience too, because I gave a really terse description of what that is in my mind, but some of the physics are at the edge of what my familiarity is. So in other words, do you want to explain each individual component before you explain your syncretization?
Yeah, so do you want me to start with the topological metaphor first, or the...
Why don't we start with that? Sure, that'd be great.
So it's basically a four-order operation to understand existence, made up of the primordial, which is the substrate I was just talking about. And then from here, the primordial creates the geometrics, which just basically reduces the potential of the primordial down to a topological boundary. And what that would look like is like the laws of thermodynamics, the laws, or the weak and strong nuclear forces, and other mathematical constants, or even the laws of logic. They come together to isolate the potential of the primordial into one boundary of existence that's still connected, that is just basically the universe. And then from here, you get the particles, which are basically the way that the essence...
That's a little bit different than my understanding of topological unified field theory. Can I give a crack at what my understanding is?
It is a little different, but it does sync up. But sure.
Sure. So my understanding is, unified field theory is an attempt to take all of the fundamental forces, electromagnetism, gravity, the strong force, and the weak force, and to explain them, all four of them, using the same framework. Okay. Now, the idea is, according to relativity, that gravity is based on a distortion of a topology, and that topology is space-time. So in other words, if you could imagine let's say you had a tablecloth and it was stretched out, and now you're gonna grab one part of the tablecloth and you're gonna kind of pull on it. That kind of creates a gravity well. And that's the sort of analogy for the way topology has a relationship to space-time, and the way that relationship of the topological distortion of space-time creating a gravity well, that's how gravity is created. Now, the unified field theory comes to basically the argument that perhaps there are other dimensions, right, and other topologies. And if we understood those topologies better, they would give us an accounting of how we have electromagnetism, the strong force, and the weak force. Is that pretty close to, is my understanding pretty close to the physics of it, at least? Is that correct in your mind?
It sounds right, but I'll tell you one thing, a discrepancy that I think we had yesterday was I mentioned gluons as coming after the strong force. And this is because, as you just described, you basically just described like a flux tube that makes gravity. So this is why I stated that after the strong nuclear force of S5 and S7 and all these S.
And I think people in the chat probably don't know what you mean by S5 or S7, nor do I, to be honest.
Okay, well, let me finish explaining the topological metaphor, and then I'll go on to Tuft. So after you have the geometrics, you have particles that form, which are basically things like planets and people or objects or whatever. And these form the essence of the primordial through the geometrics to make forms or particles to live within the boundaries of the geometrics. So this is like a planet living in the galaxy, floating by and moving along according to the way that the universe moves it.
Now, when we were on the Objective Ethics channel, I think my point was these sound like they're sort of poetic descriptions of things, and it doesn't sound like I have a hard time translating them into an actual specific argument. So I'm going to bring up Max, if that's okay. Max, are you okay maybe acting as an interlocutor and maybe asking some questions that sort of sharpen everyone's understanding of what this argument actually is?
I can ask some questions. I mean, I am confused about what he's talking about too, but I'll try to listen and see if I can figure it out here.
And I think the question for me is, this is the main question, is like, what are you saying? And how does that translate into an actual analytic point? Or is it just sort of a nice analogy for what we see?
Okay, well, let's just look at the three things I mentioned, and then I'll show you how they equate to the equation that we just were talking about. You have the primordial, you have the geometrics, and then you have the particles. So you have this ever-present substrate that is eternal. From this ever-present substrate, you have boundaries that form. And then within these boundaries, you have the essence of the primordial take shape in the form of things like planets and people, and they act according to the rules established by the geometrics, like the laws of thermodynamics or gravity or whatever. So how this relates to the tuft is, it's basically, the equation for it is S1, and then there's an arrow that points forward to the right. S9, and then there's another arrow that points forward that says CP4. So S9 would basically be the primordial, and S9 is all of space. It's all the dimensions together at once. So the way this forms is you have the S1 fibers, which are fibers of electromagnetism. They wrap around themselves. Nielsen describes it like a ball of yarn that you wrap around it, that wraps around itself, forming a geometric hierarchical shell. Once you get enough S1 fibers that have wrapped around itself, then you get the S3 layer. The S3 layer is the weak nuclear force. And then once you get enough S1 fibers wrapped around that, Then that makes the strong nuclear force in the S5 shell. And then once you get enough S1 fibers wrapped around that, then you get gluons in the S7 shell. And then to get from S7 to S9, it creates more complex topological vectors, or as you were just describing, like the picnic cloth that stretches itself. And this basically forms flux tubes, which are gluons of elasticity. So they're like elastic rubber bands that you can pull apart. And this is where gravity comes from, which forms S9. S9 is total space and is the totality of all these S1 fibers coming together to form the different geometric layers, which are dimensions. So S1 through S9 are four dimensions.
Now let me pause right there, because I mean, there's some of what you're saying that is physics and some of what you're saying is philosophy. And sometimes I feel like you're moving between those two domains in a way that makes the argument a little harder to track for me. I'm just being very honest with you. Like, for instance, when you say, oh, there's the ever-present substrate. Well, we don't actually know that, let me stop there, actually. Let me stop myself there, and I'll give Mac a chance
Let me clarify, because the ever-present substrate is the topological metaphor. I did not once mention that for the topological unified field theory. I said that it's made of electromagnetic fibers that wrapped around itself.
What are these fibers made out of?
Electromagnetism. They're like Maxwell's equations describes Gauss's law of electricity and magnetism.
But the electromagnetism is a field that exists ubiquitously throughout the whole universe. Why would it be a fiber?
These are the fibers that make up the universe, according to this theory.
Max, do you want to chime in and see if you can just kind of steel man the argument?
So, okay, so the physics is a bit beyond me. So I'm trying to look up the unified field theory, and so all the fundamental forces, or people think they are actually arising from fiber bundle connections. Is what I'm gathering from this, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Kurt's comment is on the screen as well, and he's being a little bit glib and a little bit funny, and he seems like he's being...
Okay, so I guess he has a good point. Like, what are we actually getting from this theory? Like, what is the value of it?
Yeah, I think Dr. Kurt's being a little spicy today, but I think that is kind of what I'm trying to get to as well.
Well, it comes down to the fact that once space is complete and wrapped around itself, gravity will pinch out for itself boundaries, which is known as CP4, or projected space, and this will create an eight-dimensional manifold that will reduce itself through various other projections that we are living in, and we are living in a four-dimensional projection of this eight-dimensional sphere, or eight-dimensional fold, which comes from S9. And the way that, as I was stating yesterday on Objective Ethics, it is just another form of language, a more complex form of language to describe what is being talked about in Genesis, the first 3 verses, where it describes
and I think that was my second question yesterday that I had, is the way you get back to Genesis from this stuff. In other words, you said a lot of words. Genesis says some words, but I think your explanation that this is what Genesis is pointing towards.
If we just look at the phenomenon of what I'm talking about, okay. So what I'm basically talking about is, one thing I didn't mention is the Hopf vibration, which is central to Tuft, or the topological unified field theory, which is basically, as total space is folding upon itself, there is a mathematical map, which, as I stated, gravity pinches out for itself boundaries of dimensions. So this Hopf vibration will map out these spaces. And then from there, S1 fiber threads will move through following the hot vibration into this 8th dimensional projected space from the totality of space. And that's exactly what's being described in Genesis, because what you have is you have God created the heavens and the earth, you have total space, or S9, and you have projected space, which is CP4.
So to quote Dr. Traster's analysis, how do we know that this isn't just parallelomania? In other words, you're giving us some physics, and you're saying there's some physics in Genesis, but how do we know that what you're seeing in Genesis is not just, essentially parallelomania, that it's not pareidolia, that you're not seeing the pattern in Genesis because you want to see it based on your pre-existing understanding of physics in this regard?
Okay, well, let's just examine the phenomenon that I'm talking about, and then we can ask if it means whatever I've never heard the term you just mentioned, so maybe you can explain it to me after, and then we'll see if it applies or not.
Sure.
But you have the heavens and the earth.
Max, feel free to chime in with questions.
Yeah, I think I'll just give him another chance to explain.
Okay, sounds good.
You have the heavens and the earth, and you have God, which connects them. You have total space, and you have projected space, and you have the hot vibration, which connects them. And then it says that the Spirit of God moved above the faces of the deep. And that's basically what the hot vibration does. It moves into the projected space and maps it out. And then God says, let there be light. And then there was light. And what is light? It's the S1 fiber threads. It's the electromagnetism, which follows the hot vibration into this dimension. And that's exactly what the light does after God speaks, because the breath and the word are inseparable. You cannot speak without taking breath. And the S1 fibers and the hot vibration are inseparable, because there would be no movement or doing anything for the S1 fibers without the hot vibration. So these are the parallels I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, let's give it about 2 or 3 more minutes, then we'll move on to the next person. But here's what I would like to see to make this a more cogent, more persuasive argument. If you said, here's something that you find in Genesis that points to this, okay, and here's a bunch of sentences that we find in other books that there's no way to interpret as pointing to this, then I think you might have a good argument in saying that, that there's an association between your conception of the physics, your conception of cosmology, and your theological conclusions. I feel like there's still like a lot of, like, I'm not sure that there's anything in Genesis that points to what you're saying specifically. In other words, I could read Genesis any number of ways and probably come out with a contradictory viewpoint.
All I'm talking about specifically are the first 3 verses.
Ryan Murphy's asking, does the speaker have some Blender animations that we could see? That'd be kind of interesting. How much have you fleshed out this argument in your own content set? I'm happy to point people to it.
I've got videos. I don't have animations, but I have videos explaining this stuff.
I'd love to see that. So why don't we do this? Why don't I'll bring up the next speaker. And then if you put a link in the comment section, I'll copy and paste that link to the video's comment section so that people can see that and check it out.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about this idea?
All it is syncretism is what I do. So I take what people are saying and I try to demonstrate and show that they are talking about the same thing, just using a different language, because we're all experiencing the same world. And just because the language of the ancients and these older stories might lack the predictive power of science does not invalidate them. Instead, it shows a different type of sophistication in what they're communicating. And that's really all I want to say.
Well, give us the videos that describe this a little more. I think I'm having a bit of a head scratching moment, and I think some people in the conversation are as well. But I'm not saying that you're onto nothing. I just think that defining these terms individually and adding some analysis that says that this is how you justify that this thing points to this thing. Any other words of advice, Max?
I don't know. I'm just struggling to see like how these fibers or anything are being even like metaphorically showing up in Genesis. Like I don't see it at all.
It's the light. The light that follows God.
So
you have the spirit, and then after the spirit, the light follows the spirit into the depths of the water. That's what the S1 fibers do, following the Hop vibration into the 8th-dimensional manifold.
Well, okay. Well, let's bring up the next speaker. I'll leave you in the I'll leave you in the chat, and if what I'd encourage you to do is put something in the private chat where you, okay, this is your link that you put in the private chat. Okay, I'll copy this link and I'll paste it to the public chat just so that people can see it. And then we'll keep going, and we'll bring up the next speaker. The next speaker is going to be Truth Matters.
All right, it was good talking.
It's really good to chat with you too, and thanks for coming up and presenting your argument. And I hope we talk again. And I genuinely mean it. I'll check out your content. I'll try and give it a better shake than what I'm doing right now. I think we're sometimes there's a good idea there, and it just doesn't have a chance to poke through the noise of not being quite understood. Truth Matters. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
Hey, what's up, bro? Everything is fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. Can you just can you tell me again? You're over 18. I should be asking all our callers that, but you are over 18,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up, Truth Matters?
Everything is fine, but today I'm trying to understand that what's the topic, and I'm just trying to understand. And there are a lot of words that I never heard before, so I need to check it out in the vocabulary. Yeah. So
Yeah,
even I've
no
been
worries.
thinking that.
And I would recommend you check out the video. I will check it out as well, probably after the chat. My background is really much more in a much more narrow. In other words, I can't speak authoritatively beyond the realm of like what an undergraduate physics class would.
So I would prefer to just listen. Yeah, listen to the conversation, and I'm going to stay at the backstage.
No. Well, you can ask anything you want. In other words, so you can ask me any questions that you want to ask about anything. So you can ask any questions about theology, about atheism, about Christianity. You're welcome to tell us what your worldview is, and we can talk more about that.
Okay. So my question is like, if we see like something in the Bible, either it's the Old Testament or the New Testament. So my question is that, like, if I raise a point, like, I feel like these are the stories people made, and they create words, and then they refer that that these are the words of the Jesus, and that was his God. Like I've been before, I really didn't know that about the Jesus God. When we read the New Gospel, uh, the New Testament, and then we see that 4 times it's mentioned that Jesus Christ, he was drinking wine, and it was shocking for me. Like, yeah, on the one hand, we see that he's a God Almighty, then he took flesh, and then we see that he was drinking wine. So, like, I'm a person, yeah, I'm
Oh, so
35.
you're sorry. You had a few questions that you asked there, but it sounds like right now your main question is how do you reconcile Jesus drinking wine?
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
the Old
I want
Testament
to.
does have. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, like, my question is like the things which are referring to that these are the stuff done by Jesus Christ. So I have objection. Like, I cannot expect that so many things referring about Jesus in the in the New Testament. I disagree that. I don't think so that he been doing those stuff. That's my point. So
There are
so
things you're saying. There are
how?
things that Jesus does in the New Testament that he ought not do. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in reality, he didn't do that. So many statements. I think like he never made those statements, but they're in the New Testament, and people are quoting them. and they thought that these are the words spoken by the Jesus. I mean,
Okay, so
my
what I would
observation,
recommend,
yeah.
yeah, what I'd recommend that you check out is let me go to my specific video on this topic, because I did actually make a video about this. Now, almost every New Testament scholar will say that Jesus did speak some of the words in the New Testament. The question that they disagree on is what percentage of things that Jesus taught are based on real contemporaneous understandings
Uh-huh.
of those things.
Hmm.
So I'm putting a link in the chat right now, and I'll put it in the private chat too. But this link is a video that I made. No, the video that I made basically looks at about 10 different, or I think actually 11 different evaluative criteria, right? And those evaluative criteria say this is something that would increase your confidence that this is a real contemporaneous teaching of Jesus, or this is something that would decrease your confidence, right? So the evaluative criteria point in one direction or another. Like, let me just give you a few examples. If there's a statement that Jesus made that is written down in a mnemonic format, a format that's more easily memorized, that's something that would carry increased validity. If it's there in multiple independent streams, that would also carry increased validity. So now in the video, I use criteria that are developed by, E.P. Sanders and Bart Ehrman and many other individuals. But I don't think I'm the first person to make that set of criteria. I just think I'm sort of combining them in a specific framework, and I combine them into major and minor criteria. And that to me is helpful in saying these are things that Jesus actually taught, and these are things that he didn't actually teach. But I'm looking at specific evaluative criteria that lend to the historiographical veracity that something was a real contemporaneous teaching of Jesus.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Somehow, but I mean, like, if we come up with this idea, like, after a study, we get to know that, well, there are certain statements which were really made by this guy, peace be upon him, and there are some statements people made, and they say that these are the words of the Jesus, but in reality, those are not the words of the Jesus. So in this scenario, we reach on a point like, how we can, I mean, like, act on Old Testament, or or in New Testament, like, we are not sure
Well,
about
let
what
me
what
let
yeah.
me give you another level of analysis. I sort of like think of myself as Tavo, a person who has a fondness, proclivity, and belief in the teachings of Jesus. And then there's sort of Tavo the scholar, right? So from a
Mhm.
scholarly standpoint, I would say there's some things that we can be more certain that Jesus said, and there's some things that we should be more skeptical that Jesus actually said. That's from a scholarly standpoint. Now, from the standpoint
Uh-huh.
of just my own personal beliefs, I believe that the teachings that are in there, that are in the New Testament, are helpful, valid, and useful teachings. Now, what is the likelihood that we got the most important teachings from the New Testament of the ones that were contemporaneous to Jesus? I think from a personal standpoint, because I'm fairly pretty close to believing in Jesus, I think that's an easy argument to make. And the reason why is if Jesus has the capacity to resurrect himself from the grave, to heal people, to do other deeds that are, at least to me, apparently miraculous, then it seems to me reasonable that Jesus could conduct whatever interventions are necessary to make sure that the most important parts of his teachings do get into the New Testament. But as a scholar, I'm willing to be more reserved and say, well, we should really be more skeptical and we should have certain evaluative criteria. But those evaluative criteria to me point to the idea that I can be certain that Jesus said at least some percentage of what is in the New Testament. There's a very skeptical source called the Jesus Seminar, and I think John Dominic Crossan was involved in that. And I'm speaking a little bit off the cuff, so I should refresh my memory on this information. But that seminar concluded that I think about 20 or 30% of what's in the New Testament was a real statement by Jesus, a real contemporaneous statement. Now, we don't mean exact words, okay? But we mean that these were real teachings that Jesus had. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm going to bring up Chris at the same time because Chris is a much more theologically well-versed scholar than I am. So Chris, you're on right now with Truth
Hi.
Matters. But yeah, Chris, anything you want to add to what I just said?
Yeah. Whether the statements from Jesus are actually Jesus' statements or the recollection of the authors, like Mark and Luke, were secondhand recipients of the words. We don't know. The big question is, what criteria would we establish to deny the words as written? And lacking other evidence, I think we need to accept that either those words or something akin to those words were stated.
Chris, are you okay if I share also that you're having back problems and that's why you're recumbent right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just so the people in the chat don't think anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So when
yeah.
you see me wriggle around, it's just chronic pain. I'm trying to.
Yeah, you're in my prayers often, actually,
Mr.
Chris.
Tavo, I just want to pray for Chris. I saw him
So
before. But
yeah, how about
I
this?
just
How about this?
don't know.
Truth matters. Let's go to your next question, and I suspect that your next question is going to be something about a specific teaching of Jesus that you want to ask more questions about. Is there a specific
So,
teaching, in other words, that you think about that you want us to say, how valid is this? How accurate is this? How likely is it that this was a real contemporaneous teaching of Jesus?
I'm going to put the question related to the same thing. And before that, I'm going to pray for Chris that may God Almighty give him health and make him financially strong and a long, healthy life. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks very much. And
So my,
I don't want to share anything about your health, Chris, that you don't want to be shared, but you are in my prayers often. So if you want to say anything to the audience, I'm happy to do that and endorse the prayer requests that people are putting in the chat.
Yeah.
I tend to not say too much because I don't want to, be like, I don't want to expose any health history here.
Yeah. I've got a surgery coming up on Friday and Tuesday. So if people can just pray that that goes well, that'd be great.
We certainly will, Chris. And you've reached out to me several times with some really good resources, so I'm glad you're here. All right. So yeah, truth matters. Any specific questions?
So my question here would be like, which makes sense. Like, I mean, like, if we are not sure, like, let's suppose we make a criteria. Like, let's suppose, for instance, we are sure 50% that these are the statements spoken by the Jesus Christ, and there are so many statements we assume like it seems like these are not the words of the Jesus Christ. So in this situation, like, how we can follow the Jesus Christ? I mean, how someone can follow Jesus Christ? Like, then he's going to get like,
What's an example of a teaching that makes you certain that this is not divine, a divinely inspired teaching?
Yeah, so here I'm going to give a example from the character of Jesus Christ, which is mentioned in the Bible, in the New Testament. So when we see like,
What
and
truth matters? Can you refresh our memory? What's your theology? What religion are you?
I'm a Muslim, yeah.
Okay.
So here I'm going to raise a point like if you go to Asia and then you will get to know like India is a big population and another two countries, Bangladesh, and they're like 25% population of the whole world, maybe more. So in that tradition, on the one hand, we need to remember that if someone is representing Christianity, so they claim that it's for the whole humanity. So that we have a one point that is for the whole humanity. Now, on the other hand, if we see the Asian tradition, then we get to know, and I'm Asian, I can tell you anything about Asia, about China, India, Pakistan. I know all tradition about Iranian people, everybody. So the thing is, like in this continent, like the Asia, which is the biggest continent, uh, nobody has concept like if someone drink wine, they consider him not a good person. You understand? So they don't consider him consider a person who's consuming alcoholic products. So they say that is a
Well,
bevra. Bevra means
but
like
it seems to me like you're arguing for a moral standard that is purely
yeah,
based
yeah,
on
yeah,
an
yeah.
ad
It's somehow
populum.
related to yeah.
Yeah, but you're arguing for a moral standard that's based on an ad populum assertion. In other words, you're saying that drinking wine is immoral, right? And
Yeah,
what yeah, and what is that? What is it based on? In other words,
yeah.
you're just saying a lot of people feel that that's immoral, but that doesn't,
Uh-huh.
to me. I mean, I know lots of people who drink wine on occasions. I wouldn't call them all immoral people. I don't believe you should ever be like publicly drunk. I don't believe you should probably ever be drunk. I think being drunk under any circumstances is probably not healthy. But I know people who have a glass of wine sometimes, and that certainly doesn't seem to me to be a moral transgression.
So I mean, here I'm going to share one thing. Like, then there is one more thing to understand over here. Like, we people have different, a bit. I will say that I will divide in three kind of human nature. In one, on what point, like, if I see myself personally, I'm a person. Like, if I drink tea, I am a tea drinker. Okay, so can you imagine on my free day, I'm going to drink, maybe 12 or 12 plus cups of half-liter cups of tea. So if sometimes I think that, like, I'm a person, I never consume a one drop of wine or any alcoholic product in my whole life. I'm the one. I never consume. So then we have people that, like, they do things occasionally. Like, you gave an example,
Well,
like,
I mean, you already talked about the wine, but I
uh-huh.
don't. I guess my is. I guess I'm trying to. I just want you to like kind of hone in on an argument a little bit. So I'm trying to help you, Steelman here. But you're saying Jesus was unethical because he drank wine.
Uh, I, my belief is that he never drank wine. That's my belief.
Oh,
And
okay.
if yeah, if so, so here my point is that if someone say that in, like, we read the New Testament, then we get to know occasionally or whatever. People say according
Why
to
are
the,
you so certain that he never drank wine?
because I think, like, it can be a well reason for the kids and generation. Like, what if my kid is going to take his first cup of wine in his whole life and he's 14, 13, whatever, and I say, well, then later on he's going to turn into a drunkard. So I give him.
But
Uh,
you have to parse out. Drinking wine is not being a drunk, right? You're not turning into a drunk if you drink
Yeah,
some
yeah,
wine.
yeah. But as I mentioned before, like, when we start something, even smoking coffee, then we have different people, different nature. Then we start more and more and more. That's like, I'm also one of kind person. So sometimes I think that if I in
Well,
my
but I mean it's not always a slippery slope, right? Like I've drank wine before. I've never smoked cigarettes. I've never been drunk.
Mhm.
So
But then in
you're saying
in
it's a
this way,
slippery slope.
no, I mean, like, then it looks like it's anybody who starts to drink wine, he can make argument. Well, the Jesus was drinking, so why are you stopping me? Even our God. So in this sense, the God Almighty was drinking wine when he was on earth. So how can I go? Why? Who you are stopping me
Well,
to
why
drink wine?
should you stop someone from drinking wine? I think it's
Because
reasonable
then,
to say they shouldn't be an alcoholic. They shouldn't be
uh-huh.
drunk. Yeah. But that's
Is
different than
this
saying you cannot drink any wine. I guess I'm
Yeah.
under,
is this
I guess
because
I'm
of
not
the
understanding the core of your argument. The core of your argument is any the argument only works if any consumption of wine is immoral, right? If you're saying any consumption of wine is immoral, Jesus drank wine, therefore Jesus is problematic and immoral, right? That's an argument to be made. But to
So,
me, it's not immoral to just drink a little bit of wine.
yeah. So let me make it add a bit more,
is this
like in any
is this
community of the
because of
world.
the prohibition in Islam to drinking alcohol?
That's the question.
I
Yeah, I'm
think
just
Chris's point
wondering,
is your argument becomes circular if you're, well, I let Chris make the point. Sorry.
is your argument that Isa wouldn't have drunk wine because um in the Quran progressively wine or drinking intoxicants becomes bad because it's allowed initially and then later it's bad, and you're saying, well, Isa wouldn't have done this thing that's prohibited in Islam.
I think what I understand you, the my answer would be yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then
and I can.
isn't your argument circular? You're saying this is against my religion. Jesus did it. Therefore, Jesus cannot be. Therefore, the Bible is not true. I mean,
No,
that seems
no, I would
if
not go for that. That.
if your initial standard is your own scripture, your own canon,
Uh-huh.
and you haven't proven your own canon is true.
No, I mean, like, my argument is not only on the behalf of Islam. It's structured. It's on. You can say it will be more better to say that if we see the tradition of the whole world, traditions of the not only the Western world, but we add Asia, the whole world in general. So one party said that avoid uh, uh, alcoholic products, and the other party says that, well, we are okay, we occasionally we drink. So the party who says that avoid at all, then that's the end of the story. Avoid means avoid. So then
So,
then we are not going.
so truth matters. Just to clarify something that Dr. Kurt made this point, but you understand that you've consumed alcohol, right? You yourself have consumed alcohol.
Me?
You know, like if you drink ripe fruit or if you drink fruit juices, they have some chemicals in them. They have some compounds that are definitionally alcohols. Alcohol just means you have a
But
carbon chain and then a hydroxyl group. So they're in
yeah,
ripe
but I mean,
fruit,
like,
they're in bread
yeah,
products.
somehow I understand what you are saying. I mean, like, it's I think you are referring to the uh, fermentation, I think so. But I mean, like, any kind of juice, either we derive from the
Let, let,
grapes, it never
let,
uh-huh.
let's bring I wanted to move on fairly soon, so here's what I would suggest you do. Truth matters, check out my CTF argument, because here's the big problem that I have is there are miracle claims that serve as a validation, okay, of the Islamic faith, okay, but from a historiographical standpoint, it's very doubtful that any of those miracle claims actually happened, okay. We only know about those miracle claims through one singular stream, okay? And that stream was only endorsed by the people who had the most to gain. In other words, everyone who endorsed those miracle claims was part of the caliphate, or they were the caliph themselves. You see what I'm saying? So in other
Uh-huh.
words, in other words, we just don't have very good reason to have any historical confidence whatsoever that any of the miracle claims that justify Islam is true. Now, on the other hand, we have
Yeah.
several reasons to be dubious about Islam. And let me just briefly run through some of those reasons. Number one, we know that
Uh-huh.
Muhammad took a life, right? Number two, we know that he was a conqueror. He supervised several battles. You know, he oversaw several battles. Those battles cost even more lives. It's canonically true that Muhammad took lives. It's canonically true that he married somebody when they were 6 years old, and he consummated that marriage when they were 9 years old. Now, those are all
Mr.
things that
Tavo, what was your first point? I got the second. What was the first point?
my point is this. If you had somebody
First one.
with I'll distill it down to a couple of points. If you had somebody who had the moral record of Muhammad,
Uh-huh.
and he wanted to like rent out my guest house, I'd be like, I don't want you in my guest house. You've married somebody who's 6 years old. That's that's automatically a deal breaker.
But
Much less
Mr.
so
Tavo,
somebody who has the
but
authority to start a religion. Now,
I got
I
you.
would
But I
recommend that
studied
you
and I
weigh.
found the answers. I found the
Yeah.
answers related to those objections. Yeah. If you want, I can present the.
Well, let's
Answer.
move let's move on pretty soon. If you want to make a little bit of a 30-second closing statement, and then because I want to bring up some other people.
Okay, I can understand. Yeah. My closing. I mean, then at the end we've been going like somehow out of the topic, but I mean, like the in the beginning, the conclusion of my conversation is like I assume I believe that in the New Testament there are so many things like as a character of Jesus Christ and as the words of Jesus Christ. Then I feel from my heart and I feel like there are so many words people claim that these are the words of the Jesus, and in reality they are not. Same as in the character of the Jesus Christ,
Well, but
like
everybody feels in their heart that their own religion is true and that other religions are false, right? So the key is trying to be more objective and trying to say, this is what's in my heart versus, this is something that's really justified based on the evidence. My
The
biggest
Quran,
argument. Oh, go ahead, Grace.
sorry, the Quran says that the Bible is true.
Oh, that's true.
It says it in about 30 different spots. And it even says to Christians that if we don't stand by the Bible, we have nothing to stand on. And if we take part of the Bible and we reject other parts, we are deserving of the worst punishments in hell. Because Allah was quite keen to say that the Bible is true.
Mr. Tabo, I want to respond to this. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. We've given you some stuff to think
That's right.
about. Why don't
Okay.
we move on to the next caller if you're okay with that? Truth Matters.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everyone should have the
Max,
opportunity.
do you want to say anything to Truth Matters before he gets off?
So I was only following like part of that. I was kind of looking at something else. I mean, the part about the wine, I just don't see it as being a problem. The rest of it, I was like not paying too close attention to, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Truth Matters. I really hope that you call in again. I'd love to chat with you anytime. We go live every Monday, 5 p.m. So you're always welcome to call in. You can also email me if you ever want to have a bit more of a one-on-one conversation. But hope you have a really great evening. And I hope I've given you some stuff to think about. And again, check out my video on the CTF argument. It's the most popular thing on my channel. All right, good. Let's bring up the next person. I'll go ahead and remove you if that's okay, Truth Matters. And I'll bring up, we've got Jukubot. Jukubot, hey, how's it going? You're on with us.
Oh, hey, appreciate it. What percentage would you say that?
Oh, Jukubot, I
the
should
whole
ask
God
first.
belief?
I'm so sorry, Jukubot. I should ask first, are you over 18?
Oh yeah, I'm over 18. So like on a scale of 1 to 100 or 0 to 100, what percentage would you say you are when it comes to my belief is true?
That's a really good question. It depends on which belief.
I guess you can go over your belief. I'm not too familiar with exactly what flavor of Christianity you are. You're not like one of those like young earthers or, you know, any of that, right?
I don't know. I don't believe in a young Earth. Yeah.
You like Adam and Eve were the first humans, like.
No, I mean, I think the Old Testament stories function more from an allegorical perspective. I think there's probably some history in the Torah in some of those scriptures. I think some of those have like fragments of history and maybe composite characters, and some of the stories have some components of truth and some. By the way, here's my biggest video is the CTF argument that Macintosh Pro was kind enough to put on the screen. So Macintosh Pro, good, thanks for putting that on there. So I'll tell you, I have sort of calibrated uncertainty on every theological question. I would say I'm about 55% certain that there is a God. And I'm about 85, 90% certain that if there is a God, if there is a religion that's true, that it's probably Christianity.
Okay. Are you familiar with the problem of evil?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So you believe in like an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good God?
Yeah. I don't really think that there's a problem of evil, but I'm happy to hear the counter arguments. I mean, to me, humans do evil. That's different. That doesn't disprove the existence of God. And to me, I've never seen an argument that suggests that that if there is an all-knowing, all-benevolent, all-good God, that evil will never exist. And the thought experiment that I like to bring up on this point is, would you want to be created without any capacity to do evil? And the way to answer that question is to imagine, let's say we developed a technology that could put a chip in your brain that would always compel you to make the most moral decision in any situation, okay? If that's even possible. But let's say we could do that. Would you want that chip to be put in your brain? The answer is no. So why is that a standard that you would have for God? In other words, why would you say that that God ought to do that? I've actually never seen that there's a problem of evil that argues against the existence of God.
Well, the argument would be like a good person would want to save kids from drowning or like cancer or viruses, you know?
Well, that's a very different problem. That's the argument of suffering. So I consider the problem of evil and the problem of suffering to be two distinct arguments. We can talk about either one. But if you're saying, why is there suffering in this world? Or which one would you rather address?
I'm not entirely sure. They're two different claims. I don't know. Crash Course Philosophy says problem of evil. So that's the problem. I think it's on Wireless Philosophy too. They've got like multiple videos and they call it the problem of evil. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone call it the problem of suffering.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I think they're two different things. For instance, like, you know, people getting terminal malignancies, terminal diseases, that is suffering. I don't think you would call that evil. I take the problem of evil to be like, why are we allowed to do things that are evil? I take the problem of suffering to be like, why is it the suffering happens if God is benevolent?
Well, no, that's the
I take those to be two
the
separate questions. I realize sometimes they're often like kind of lumped together.
so
But
you're
if you have a
proposing the
specific
theodicy. The
contention, if you
theodicy
have a
is
wi-
like the free will defense, right? And I'm countering that theodicy with natural evils, right? Like cancer and stuff like that. Like it makes sense for muggers to exist because they have free will. We don't want to infringe upon that free will, and so you're going to experience mugging, right?
sure.
But like cancers, these are evils that we're not responsible for, that our free will doesn't have any influence on. So it is
I
part
don't.
of the whole package.
Yeah, I don't consider cancer to be an evil. I consider cancer to be a source of suffering. I think it's useful to make that distinction because I kind of consider them separately. But we can talk about them together, or you could ask the question: why does God let there be cancer in the world? In other words, why didn't God create a world without any cancer, right? And that goes back to why did God create a world without any suffering? And the analogy that I always give people is that you can really only understand the epistemic implications of suffering from a higher plane that you're on. Okay, for instance, like if let's say that there's an anthill outside of my house, right? Now I could destroy that anthill with water, right? And that those ants might say, "Well, you're being very cruel by destroying us," right? But what they might not understand is the reason why I'm destroying them. Maybe one of the reasons why I'm flooding that anthill is because my backyard is on fire and I'm trying to put out the fire. That's one possible reason. Another possible reason might be that ants are maybe those are an invasive species of ant. Okay. Now, here, let me analogize the argument in one other way. When I work out, when I exercise, there are muscle cells called myocytes, right, that undergo apoptosis. Those muscle cells die off every time I exercise. From the standpoint of that muscle cell, me exercising is a really bad thing. I've actually killed cells in my own body by exercising. Okay. But every time I exercise, as a whole, the organism gets healthier, right? So it really depends on where your perspective is. Now, when the problem of suffering gets posed, it's always this issue of like, does God, should God create a universe where there's no suffering whatsoever, right? Wouldn't that be your expectation? Now, I've never heard that expectation laid out in a way that's convincing to me. But to me, the idea that God lets there be suffering is not something that's necessarily counterintuitive. Let me explain it in just one other way, which is if there's a population of entities, right? Let's say I create a universe. To this universe, I'm God. There's maybe 10 conscious entities in that universe. There may be a lot of things about that universe that I don't quite understand. Okay, so somebody within that universe might just say, well, I can add up the pleasure and the suffering of each individual person, okay, and I add those together, and that gives me the outcome of whether or not this universe should exist. That, to me, is what the problem of suffering does, which is not a valid way of analyzing what the purpose of the universe is. In other words, we may all be in service of greater history. Points of suffering may all be in service of something greater. And let me make one last argument. I think it becomes sort of nonsensical to talk about a universe where there is no pain and no suffering, where there is still the presence of pleasure. In other words, if our universe only had pleasure in it, then I think we wouldn't even understand what pleasure is. And talking about it, we wouldn't even have any kind of adequate vocabulary.
Okay. There's a lot to dissect there. I guess I'll start with the last point. Do you think that like starving Africans in Africa who have like elephant feet and like brain parasites, do you think that they have the ability to experience the most pleasure because they experience the most pain?
I think as human beings, we have the ability to experience a spectrum of emotion, right? But here's maybe a better example. Let's say you're born with congenital insensitivity to pain, okay? Those people won't feel pain, but they also don't feel certain types of pleasure as well. In other words, if you give those people a massage, they'll have sort of a blunted response to the pleasurable feelings of the massage. Now, that's through empirical studies.
Right. So like it's a little bit more complicated than you can't have pleasure without pain, right? It's like
Yeah,
we
sure.
don't need to go through like the experience of dying slowly from cancer to like enjoy the pleasures of life, you know? Like this is the problem of extreme suffering, right? This is the
No,
also
but in a
in
universe,
videos if,
but
anyone wants to
in a
watch them.
universe without any suffering, we would have no concept of what pleasure is. And that suffering can come in a lot of different forms. I mean, look, this is not meant to trivialize anyone who is suffering, but let me put it to you another way, okay? I'll speak as somebody who was diagnosed with terminal malignancy, okay? I was told I was going to die. I didn't die. If I die someday and I meet God, you know, I'm not going to be angry that I had that suffering. I'm going to be grateful that I've had the life. I'm going to say, wow, God, thank you for giving me the life that you've given me. Now, that's not necessarily true of everyone, and certainly not true of people throughout the full time expanse of their lives. There were moments during my suffering that if I had believed in God, I was an atheist at the time, by the way. There are moments that I had in my journey where I probably would have cursed God if I believed in God. I don't think that's I don't think that's something that's immoral to say. In fact, like my reading of Psalm 88 is all about how God sometimes doesn't comfort us in moments of suffering. And I think the psalmist in that point was probably somebody named He-Man. I think the psalmist at that point really was in a very dark period. But the point is, he was still bringing his grievance to God. And I think that's the lesson of that psalm. I don't know if that really helps you. But let me put it to you this way. Let's say I had a life of extreme pain and then I died. You know, there would still be a what I call a qualia of existing that I would think is valuable. In other words, I would still be grateful that I had that life. I can't speak for everybody, though. I mean, there may be people who live and who just curse every moment of their life, who are absolutely miserable at every moment of their lives, and that's unfortunate. We should do everything we can to help people, but I don't
When you
see
say
that.
we should do everything we can to help these people, are you referring to some kind of moral code, moral ethical system that you're appealing to?
I think it's a good idea to help people as much as you can.
Would you say that our ethics is different from God's ethics?
I don't know that I really understand ethics. I'm sort of something of an ethical emotivist. Now, ethical emotivism has been disproved, so I think the new term that has supplanted is like quasi-ethical realism. But I try to do what I can to help people around me.
Okay, but
In other words,
why?
I volunteer in a hospital once a week. You know, I volunteer in another context once a week. I also, you know, fund cancer research just because of my own experiences. I donate a lot to charitable causes. So I try to help people. I don't know that that's because it feels good to help people. I don't know that that's I don't know that I understand morality any more deeply than that.
Okay.
Any other questions, or Chris, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think our perspective on morality is likely not what the creator would have. If God exists, which I believe he absolutely does and is shown, he understands the creation of the universe, the systems that went into creating the universe, and he tells us that these systems are broken because we went against his plan. And I think the things that he allows and the things that he stops, to me, relate to free will and allowing free will to persist, which broke the system. But I don't think I'm in a knowledgeable enough place to judge the God that created the universe, because I can't even contemplate, or I can't even understand the universe. So how can I judge his moral perspective?
I think that's well said. I think Jukubot, there's a tendency to look at the universe and to look at the amount of pain and suffering that people have, and say that, you know, it shouldn't have any, that there shouldn't be any pain and suffering. How could God allow any of that to happen? But we don't understand the totality of the universe. Moreover, the sum of the individual experiences of the conscious agents within the universe is not the same as the sum of the purpose of the universe, if that's helpful. Let me give you one other thought experiment. Let's say I happen to be personal friends with God and I happen to have lunch with him once a week. And let's say there's you know, I go up to him one day and I say, you know, God, here's my issue. I show him a graph and I say, look at the bottom distribution of the bell curve. Look at these people and how much they're suffering. Shouldn't you do something to mitigate their suffering? Right? And let's say God agrees with me, says, that's fine, I'll take care of that stuff. We'll make sure that stuff doesn't happen. Now, let's say eventually, a few years later, the entire perspective of human suffering is going to shift in one direction or another, right? But there, you know, somebody could still look at that graph and say there's still a bottom 2% there who are suffering horrifically. Now, one could imagine iteratively that this experience goes on and on and on until the bell curve of human experience is so narrow and so restricted to the pleasure spectrum that any moment of neutral emotion that's not intensely pleasurable would be massively painful. So I just don't. I've never found the argument of suffering to be compelling. I spent almost all my adult life, I was an atheist, and during that whole period, I never found the argument of suffering to be personally compelling. That's not to say that it doesn't make a difference for some people. When people see people suffering, it's hard to say God is letting this happen. You know, I understand the emotional persuasiveness of the argument. Does that help?
Suffering sucks. But
Suffering sucks, yeah.
when you think of leprosy as an example, the lack of pain reception leads to people injuring themselves and not noticing, and then getting infections which used to be life-threatening, which we manage a lot better now. But it shows a perspective on pain which, when we first think about, well, we shouldn't have pain, we then understand it's a warning system to our bodies, and it's actually a vital warning system to our bodies, even though my system is completely destroyed and going haywire at the moment.
Right. I hear all these explanations basically describing the current reality we live in. And you have to do that because it's what we observe, so you can't really deny reality. But no, when most people see this extreme suffering, right, this extreme evil, and I guess for most people, a good person would want to save these people. Like if Superman was you know, had his beach chair and his umbrella and was reading the newspaper and a kid was drowning, right? We wouldn't say it was good for Superman not to save that kid because he used his own free will to get into that pool, right? Like, to me, that's
yeah, and
weird.
I understand the rhetorical persuasiveness of that argument. For me, it sort of mistakenly anthropomorphizes God, and it also is, to me, inappropriately anthropocentric, right? It puts human suffering at the center of the universe, right? The absence of suffering should be God's biggest priority. I don't, you know, let's say here, let me give you one other thought experiment. Let's say you gave me a magic wand, okay? And you said, with this magical wand, you can point it at yourself and erase all those years of pain that you personally had when you had, you know, terminal cancer, right? Would I point the wand at myself and excise that era of pain from my life? I wouldn't, right? So there is sort of a qualia of experience that we do value as humans. So even when people are suffering, oftentimes we can ask the question, would you want this period of suffering to be excised from your mind, from your life? Would you want it to be taken away? More often than not, I would suspect that people have the answer in the negative. No, if you know, and certainly when people get through those events, they often think of it differently. Humans have a really bad understanding of what pain and suffering even is. There was this great Michigan State researcher named Philip Brickman who did all these experiments about personal satisfaction. And one of the experiments he did, and I'm really oversimplifying it, so Max, feel free to fact check me on the data that I'm quoting here, because this is an experiment that was definitely overstated. Okay, but one of the things that he did is he looked at people who were lottery winners and people who had had a limb amputated, right? And so after a few months, their satisfaction essentially equilibrates. Now, if you ask a person, would you rather win the lottery or have a limb amputated, what would they say? They'd say, give me, give me the lottery. The other thing is horrific. But still, humans tend to recalibrate our suffering and understand experience in a very different way. Now that study is over quoted and the significance is overstated. So I wouldn't want to present that as an ironclad argument, but I think it does make the important point that humans don't really understand our own suffering. Does that help?
I would also. Sorry, do you mind if I add one more thing?
No, go ahead.
I think that the concepts we are given in the Bible is that God wants us to have relationship with him, but he wants it to be a choice of ours, not a dominance. And if you imagine God intervening constantly, we would see this incredible deity stepping in every time an issue comes up. There really wouldn't be a challenge of, do I want to be in relationship with him or not? Because there would just be this over-dominating presence that wouldn't really give us a free choice. And I think that is part of the issue, is interaction without dominating us and therefore taking away the choice. I suspect is one of the issues that God is dealing with.
Jukubot, does this help? Does this answer any questions for you?
Well, I don't know.
I think
I
God
never
is
heard
more
of
of a different
that.
moral agent than Superman, but I understand the moral.
What was that study again, Tavo? Do you remember the name of the study?
I don't remember the name of the study. It comes from Philip Brickman. He was one of the world's leading researchers on happiness. He was, I think, at Michigan State University. And he actually, fascinatingly, ended up taking his own life. So I find that to be sort of an tragically ironic twist in the story. But Jukubot, have we answered your questions?
Wait, I got one more thought experiment, but I also want to add on to my perspective on the study. I'm not familiar with the study, but I'm familiar with I'm going to butcher his name, Kyrgyzstan or whatever. He talked about gratitude. It kind of makes sense for me that lottery winners would be unhappy winning the lottery, because a lot of the time they recognize how many family members and how many friends that they have are just leeches, right? They show a different side of them when they know that you have money.
Well, that's true
so
too.
It does make sense. Yeah.
I mean,
but
look,
the gratitude part,
there's a lot of confounding variables in both of those situations, right? So, like for instance, let's say you have a cancer on your arm and you get that limb amputated, you might be really happy because you'll be grateful that that resection gave you a new lease on life. So I don't want to take any of those experiments too far or too literally or too but I mean, I think the things that mitigate the concern are, number one, my suffering, my pleasure is not necessarily the prime output of the universe. And number two, I don't really understand my own suffering very well, much less the suffering of others. And number three, I think there is, again, a quality of existence that, look, there's a really good chance I've not been a great person in my life, and I'm being very, very confessional with you, Juku, but I've not been a great person, right? So I think there's a very good chance that if I die, that God's going to be like, you're going straight to hell. And if that happens, I will still feel sort of gratitude that God gave me existence. Now, I don't believe in hell as eternal conscious torment. I believe it's a zone of annihilation. But I don't, I would not begrudge that God. I would not argue with that God that he should have put more pleasure in my life. I'm just, I don't. So I can't speak for the pain and suffering of others, nor for the overview effect of others. And there's sort of that Pollyanna principle that we look back on the past and remember it through a much more rose-colored perspective. It's a good question, Juku. I hope we come back. I hope you come back. I hope we chat with you some more.
Okay. On the gratitude part, I was gonna go about like people who commit or who attempt to commit suicide. They seem to enjoy life more, right? They oftentimes do conferences or things like that where they try to help other people who are suicidal. Like even if they're extremely disabled now, like they're still happier than before, and obviously complicates things, right? Like it seems like your body's hijacked by your desire to survive, that like it makes you happy. Like maybe, I don't know, I'm making shit up, but you're right. It's obviously, happiness is a very complicated thing to talk about.
As is suffering. I think look, I've been asked about the problem of suffering several times. I would say 30 or 40% of the time, the best response that I have is, tell me more about what you're going through. Tell me more about your suffering. And is there anything that you want to talk about? Because I think it's sometimes more important to be a good friend and a good human than to proselytize to someone.
Okay, maybe I should clarify. I've seen some people who have tried to commit suicide and have failed it. And I'm not referencing a study, just like some YouTube videos
Sure.
who have like come out of it feeling grateful that they were alive, that at least they're alive, at least they're experiencing life. Another question is, you familiar with the parable of the invisible gardener?
Let's do one more question and then let's move on, because I know there's some other people who want to hop up, and hopefully, I know Random was the Random dropped off. I was hoping to get Random up here. Random, if you're still here, I'd love to get you up here at some point. Go ahead, Juku. Let's do one last question, then we'll bring Dr. Kurt up.
All right, this was kind of a bit much then. I don't know. We can
go
do
ahead.
it another time then.
No,
Right,
go ahead. Let's do it quickly if we can.
Yeah, so two guys are in the jungle. They see a garden. One guy posits it's a gardener, so they sit out and wait. And then he changes his claim to invisible gardener, so he brings out the hounds. Changes the claim to, well, he doesn't have a scent, and he keeps changing his claim to something that's unobservable, untestable, unfalsifiable, right?
I think I missed the first part of the thought experiment. Two guys, they find a garden in the jungle.
Yeah, what looks like to be a garden. And then one guy goes, well, some gardener must be tending to this garden, right?
Sure.
You get a bunch of flowers that just look different from everything else.
Go on. Yeah. So your question isn't that sort of like religion?
Well, yeah, the idea is that this is an unfalsifiable belief, and we should reject unfalsifiable beliefs, because if we can't test it, we can't meaningfully make any conclusions about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I like, my favorite argument is the CTF argument, which if you haven't checked that out, you should check it out. It's in the chat. You can find it on my channel as well, but it is based on real, quantifiable academic historiographical arguments. Now, it's a comparative ranking argument of religions, right? So it doesn't put atheism against theism. But when I did this analysis, what I found was rather surprising, which is that Christianity performs well across all the evaluative criteria, and especially for an ancient religion. And this was even more surprising, there's almost no other religion, including modern religions, that have similar patterns of attestation and documentation. So it's probably worth you checking out that argument. It might be interesting to you. But in terms of the arguments for God, you're right. There are some arguments that are pretty bad. I think the arguments that say, look at how fine-tuned the universe are, I think those are interesting, but there are several ways of, I feel like you're sort of hinting at the fine-tuning argument a little bit. Is that kind of a fair steel manning?
No, this is I think this is like Karl Popper and his idea of falsification or whatever, for like how we best design experiments to come to a more true conclusion about the world.
Sure, yeah.
We design experiments in which they can be falsified.
Yeah, in the words of Ludwig von Wittgenstein, when we talk about beauty or theology or morality, we are sort of departing to the fringe or beyond the fringe of what scientism can do. In other words, empirical tests might not suffice to answer questions in those domains. Let's get Dr. Kurt up here, and Jukubot, I hope we talk again, because we've been chatting for a while, but I'm really enjoying it, and just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. But I hope you're encouraged to come back sometime. Please check out my CTF argument, and my email address is on the video. And I also go live every Monday, 5 p.m. PST, and I'm happy to talk more with you about this stuff. You've been very kind, and you've been a very good interlocutor, and it's been illuminating for me to chat with you. So I hope we talk some more.
Hey, for sure. I'll let you go. I'll check out your argument and watch it and see what
I'd love
I think.
that. I'd love that. Yeah. But call in anytime. We're happy to chat with you. I know we've got some other people who are chomping at the bit to come up. So we'll bring up Dr. Kurt. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to bring up Random Catholic because he left and then he came back. Horus the Hero is going to be up next after that. But we're at an hour and 20 minutes. And sometimes I kind of devote the last few minutes of the panel to a mega panel. But Horus, rest assured, I'm going to get you up here. And then we have Jay and BBN who are going to come up after that. So, hey, Dr. Kurt, good to see you. First, before we start, Dr. Kurt,
Is this now a mega panel?
How old are you, Dr.
I'm
Kurt?
over 18.
Okay.
I
Just making sure.
appreciate the query.
Thank you so much, Tavo. I appreciate it.
You owe me a Tavo impersonation at some point down the road. Macintosh
I
Pro.
don't think I'm never going to be able to do you.
Well, Macintosh Pro was kind enough to. I was hoping Robin would join the conversation because I've been working on my Kentucky accent. So if Robin hops up,
Oh, beautiful!
You'll hear some of that.
Beautiful. Okay, so I don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody had had a chance to see my Christianity disproving syllogism.
Yeah, sure. Is this in one of your articles that I've seen?
Yeah, so premise one is if the history of life reveals only constrained natural processes without discernible caring, protection, or intervention by a creator, then creation does not reveal a caring, directing, protecting, or intervening creator. Premise two, the history of life reveals only constrained natural processes without discernible caring, directing, protecting, or intervening. Therefore, creation does not reveal a caring, directing, protecting, or intervening creator. The Christian God is inherently within the text of Christianity, described as such a thing. So this disproves the existence of that Christian God.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to say anything. Random or Chris or anyone can say anything to this stuff. Oh, and I guess Jukubot is still in the chat too. So, but I'll remove. Actually, I'll leave Jukubot in case he wants to chime in and say some other stuff.
I would argue that unexplained healings that occur in direct relationship to prayer are pretty well documented, and that would
they would be useless because we know the death rates, and we know the injury rates, and we know the rates of spontaneous healing, and they're minuscule. So a shepherd who only healed like 1 out of every 100,000 of his flock would be a terrible shepherd.
Well, you could make the judgment that he's a terrible shepherd, but that still doesn't.
So the Christian God is a good shepherd.
That still doesn't mean that the shepherd doesn't exist.
No, the Christian God is a good shepherd. He's not just like some shitty shepherd. He's not just some really bad shepherd. Sorry.
No, that's
he's
okay.
Not a very bad shepherd. He's a good shepherd.
I let some profanity slide earlier, and I should have said something at that point. But just a reminder, no profanity on the channel.
Yeah.
But I guess
my apologies.
I guess my point is, at the very least, Dr. Kurt, you would need some qualifying thing in there in the premise. In other words, like greater than what we expect for baseline healing or something, right? Because
no, any discernible, because I don't obviously, like, medically, there's no reason to suspect that any of these healings are anything other than natural events.
But I mean, that's based on.
No, there's no generally agreed upon miraculous healing in the entire literature.
Yeah, that's true, but that's from your subjective perspective. In other words,
it's not from my subjective perspective. It's from the collective belief about medicine on the part of people who write scientific papers, because there's not one peer-reviewed
idiosyncratic cases, right? In other words, if I ran yours, here's the problem. Your syllogism is let's take it in a vacuum, okay? But now let's take it and let's put it in front of a specific individual. Okay. Now I ran into an experience where I had a guy with widely metastatic renal cancer, which spontaneously healed with no chemotherapy and no other intervention, and it was unexplained. If I ran your syllogism in front of that individual, he would say, "Well, that's the syllogism doesn't work because I've experienced God's healing."
No. It still absolutely works because he is one out of how many people in a year who die from renal cancer.
But that's not. But it depends on who your syllogism is hitting, right? To him,
no. It doesn't depend on who. That's the point of a shepherd. A shepherd has a whole flock. His responsibility is to the whole flock.
Well,
But you're judging the effectiveness of the shepherd, not necessarily the existence of the shepherd there.
The effectiveness is the thing that demonstrates the existence, right? I could say right now that I'm the shepherd of every sheep flock on earth, but I'm not.
Here's what would make your argument more ironclad, Dr. Kurt. If I had two universes and one universe had a God and the other universe did not have a God, okay, then, and you said, well, let's look at this argument, and like you pose it to both universes and you showed that there was a meaningful difference. But without that analysis, I don't see how you can make the case. Let me give you another contrary perspective.
No. We can't run that experiment.
I could probably name off the top of my head, at least right now, a dozen people who would experientially, empirically argue that they have experienced the healing of God in any number of ways.
I could name probably thousands of people who have sleep paralysis who experientially are certain demons exist.
No, but that's not your argument. Your argument isn't about demons and sleep.
My argument is specifically that people's personal inner experience of things is not dispositive of what the scientific facts are, right? And you would agree with that.
That's true, but we don't know the baseline rate. We only have one universe of empirical experiences.
Right. So we have the ability to compare the actual experiments that have been done here on Earth with people. And what we found is that prayer, intercessory prayer, is ineffective, and if it has any effect at all, it's harmful. That's what the studies show.
All the experiments that you would do are on this Earth within this universe.
Right, and your position is that God would hide his existence. I know that, but that's not what a good shepherd would do.
Why would a good shepherd not hide their existence?
Because a good shepherd would show the sheep that he was there caring about them, and
then you need a better
let them be devoured by wolves. So your position is that when Christianity describes God as a good shepherd, they are actually saying the exact opposite. He's a shepherd who leaves and doesn't care.
Well, I don't say that. I would never argue that God left and didn't care.
Well, the way we show that we care about something is by taking action, right?
Yeah, and I could name 12 people who believe that God has taken action in their lives.
Yes, but do you think scientifically that is a dispositive case, that a disinterested observer would see those cases and agree that that was the action of a God? Because you have a Nobel Prize waiting for you if you can demonstrate that.
But that's a very different argument than the one you're making. The argument you're making is that the presence of pain and suffering in the world shows that God doesn't. Well, why don't you steel man your argument?
That's not my argument at all. That's not my argument at all. I already gave you. There's no discernible evidence of a creator. There's no discernible evidence of a creator in directing, caring, or intervening on the part of living creatures. But there may be individual living creatures who believe in Tangrism and that the sky cares for them and the sky is watching over them. And literally, of course, the sky is literally over them, right? Okay, but they're considered to be wrong by people who understand the sky and what it is.
Okay, but I can name. I met a guy yesterday who had a really compelling story on what God did in his life. He would argue that God is very active in his life, and and I could name almost any Christian who would say, "Well, God is, God laid down his life for me, and that's a good shepherd."
Tavo, is it that the Christian position that every person who reports a miraculous healing from any tradition is properly ascribing the cause of their miraculous healing?
No.
Okay, so then the Christian cannot hold that only the people from within the tradition who get miraculous healings are properly ascribing it.
But we have actually pretty good data that shows that there are better outcomes: morbidity, mortality, overall societal quality of life, psychology, well-being. All of those are improved by attending.
Those are all fully explainable within naturalism, without any divine intervention at all.
It's flatly false. Well, that's flatly false. There's never been.
No, it's not flatly false. Again, if you can demonstrate the existence of the supernatural, Tavo, go for it. You'll get a Nobel Prize.
I'm quoting literature that's already out there that shows that people who attend church regularly have better morbidity, lower rates.
Oh my God! Have you studied epidemiology? Do you not know that that there's a problem that people who can't attend church often have worse health outcomes because of the fact that they can't attend church?
Yes, yes, and the multifactorial analysis that's been done in these studies
Right.
takes into account. Oh, well, hold on. Let me answer that, because it is something that's addressed in the studies. In other words, you're saying, are you self-selecting for a population that's able to attend church, right? But even when we control for things like body habitus, activities of daily living, your ability to get up and move around, your physical ability to attend church, even when we control for all those variables, there is still a factor of regular church. Yeah,
no. The studies don't study church. They study religious service attendance, which includes
they study
mosque,
religious service attendance, but it
which
also
includes mosque, which includes like ashram and all those things, right?
Yes, that's true.
So the theologies of these various groups are in direct and 100% conflict, which guarantees that there's a natural explanation, not a supernatural one. If only Christians got that benefit, we would have an argument.
That's not true at all, right? And here's why it's not true. Because we have tried to reproduce these studies in other countries, and we failed to do so. Now, the explanation why that has been advanced for that is because in other studies where religious observance is compelled, these health and sociological benefits likely dematerialize. But that's never been quantifiably or shown, and it's never been shown with certainty. Now, no one has, and no one would ever do a study that compares religions head to head on which attendance of which religion makes you healthier. No epidemiologist would ever do those studies. And even if you did, they'd be really underpowered so that you wouldn't be able to do a good study. But the data is out there, and it contradicts the thesis of your argument.
No, the data specifically only looks at religious service attendance. The religious service attendance clearly has a very difficult,
hold on,
very difficult to control for.
Hold on, in countries that are majority Christian population. In other words, we try to repeat these studies in other countries, and we don't get the same results.
Because other religions don't expect the same healings and things.
Again,
they don't have the same.
In every country
theories.
where they're studied, they study all the different denominations of Christianity that have mutually conflicting theologies, and non-Christian organizations that have religious service attendance.
Well, Dr. Kurt,
so there's simply no way to demonstrate any supernatural claim, even if we accept those statistics as face value, when we look at them at face value, they don't prove much at all.
Why don't you repeat the propositions, because I think that'll be illuminating.
Sure. So syllogism is proposition 1. If the history of life reveals only constrained natural processes without discernible caring, direction, protection, or intervention by
all right. So the first issue there is discernible, right?
Yeah, discernible is the only way we can tell, right? We have to be able to discern it.
Okay, but here's the problem with that analysis, okay? If I have a psychological tool that assesses for sociopathy, okay, and I'm interviewing some people who may or may not be sociopaths, but there's a group of people who are more intelligent than the designers of the test, then they can game the test, correct?
If your position is that God is gaming the test, then God is a bad shepherd. He's not a good shepherd.
Why does
if that's your position, that he's Loki, that he's a trickster,
why does lack
fine. That's fine.
Why does lack of discernibility make God a bad God?
Because Romans says it is discernible.
Here's the first.
The Christian position is it is discernible.
Well, here's the problem. There need to be more qualifiers for what you mean by discernibility. That's at least one thing that the argument, I think, needs, right? Because
I'm asking you, what can you discern? Because I've seen no evidence yet of a supernatural or any theologically necessary fact, right?
Just a reminder to the chat, I would argue that you try to mitigate the profanity.
I didn't say any profanity.
No. It's just in the chat.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't, I'm happy to look at your syllogism. I'm happy for you to, if you wanted to, but I do think it needs to make some qualifications, right? Because some people are going to have very different answers to the questions that are implicit in the syllogism. In other words,
Yeah, I make a really strong
I-
case after the syllogism, so you should read the whole article, not just the syllogism. But,
Yeah,
Torn, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that God only allows miracles within one religion. I'm saying that people in other religions ascribe their miracles to other beings other than the Christian God. If your position is that every other group misascribes their source of miracles, but Christians do not, you have to demonstrate that.
Yeah, I understand that, Dr. Kurt, but here's the argument that I keep coming back to. Okay, scientism has limits, as you yourself have.
There's no belief system that I know of anybody except for like one guy called scientism. So you're arguing against a straw man by saying I'm a scientist.
Let me
Scientismist.
Let me at least finish the argument first. There's limitations of scientism, right? By definition, we can use scientism to evaluate any acting agent within our universe. But
since I haven't defended scientism, I don't know why you're arguing against it.
Come on, Dr. Kurt.
Well, you're arguing against something that I'm never.
Let me finish the sentence. Let me finish the sentence. Your standard for discernibility is empirical testing, right?
No, I didn't say that. I said discernible in some way that you can demonstrate.
And what if somebody has subjective discernible experience?
If it's subjective, it should be demonstrable to everyone in a way that is discernible.
What do you say to the drug addict who's able to get off drugs because he felt the presence of the Holy Spirit?
Again, there are people who misascribe miraculous events all the time under every religious tradition's viewpoint.
Oh, okay. But here's my big problem, Dr. Kurt, is you have to then parse out what your definition of discernibility is. If you mean discernibility from an objective scientific standpoint, then you're arguing for scientism. And as I've pointed out, that the limits of scientism.
No, I am not arguing for scientism.
Dr. Kurt, come on.
I didn't say that. Well, you're saying I'm arguing for something repeatedly that I keep telling you I'm not arguing for. Well, then don't you think that's frustrating to hear?
It can be frustrating, but you can still wait for me to finish my sentence. Right?
Your sentence is pretexted on something I'm disagreeing with. Why should I let you finish it?
I can't argue that you have a moral obligation to let me finish my sentences. I mean, but that's why I'm saying you're
if I tell you I'm not holding to scientism and then you pin scientism on
Dr.
me,
Kurt, hold on.
It's like not legit.
Well, what I'm saying is then you don't have a definition of what discernibility means. Right? Because somebody could say, I discern the presence of God.
Yeah. And for that person, that may be compelling, right? Just like there are people who have Marian apparitions that they believe are certain. And they feel that therefore that must be true. But there are other Christians who don't hold that those Marian apparitions are correct.
What is the yardstick for discernibility?
Whatever you can demonstrate to enough other people that they accept it. That's literally what we always use for discernibility.
Then it's an argument ad populum.
It's not an argumentum ad populum at all. It's that I go on in the article to demonstrate what I mean. And if you think that demonstration fails, then I suppose you're not convinced. Whereas if you think the demonstration succeeds, then you're convinced.
Yeah, I think what's missing from the syllogism is a better definition of discernibility. If you're saying the better definition for discernibility is there, then it's in the article, but you don't have it at hand right now. But if you're just saying my argument is discernibility is what can be demonstrated to a lot of people, I would just say, well, Christianity is demonstrated to a lot of people.
No. Christianity is like precisely making a position that I demonstrate pretty clearly in the three article series that is falsified by the evidence that we have. Now, again, you can get down into the no. The syllogism.
If you're saying there's some other argument that disproves Christianity outside of syllogism, then what's the point of the syllogism?
So is your disagreement is with premise one? It sounds like, correct?
I'm saying I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm saying you need a better definition of what.
Do you agree with premise one, or you disagree with it?
I'm saying right now it's too vague for me to make a judgment on it. Right now, you need a better definition.
You think that the word discernible just doesn't have enough meaning?
Yes. You need it. You need a yardstick for what discernibility means. I know many Christians who would argue that the presence of God is discernible in their lives. Now, if you're
Yes,
saying subjective
there are
evidence doesn't
also
count,
many non-Christians who believe that the presence of their being and their particular religious
exactly.
is
But you're
discernible in
making my
their
point
life.
for me. You're making my point for me, Dr. Kirk, because you're saying subjectively, some people would define this as discernible and some people wouldn't. And that's exactly my point, that the word discernible therefore becomes vague. You see what I'm saying?
No. It's not at all vague. Discernible, what it means is that you, after examining the evidence, see the evidence of the thing that you're looking for, right? And so I actually give a fairly strong evidentiary case for
Who's the person examining
catastrophes.
the evidence? If it's me, then I could say there's discernible evidence.
Yes, obviously you have an affinity fixation for the New Testament, so you will have very high prior probability that.
But this is the problem. This is the problem
to
with
be
many.
defeated
But this is
when
the problem
you
with
are
many-
examining the New Testament. That's
But
the
this
way
is the problem with many
fixations
arguments.
work.
You can always say the person who's doing the arguing, that the person on the contrary perspective is biased, but that doesn't work. And it especially doesn't work in academic settings. The thing that you have to do is prove that the methodology that I'm using instantiates the bias that I hold, right? If you're just saying you're biased, so you can't be the one who discerns. If that's what your argument is, then I would say you can't just say that I'm biased. You have to say Tavo's methodology for determining discernibility is flawed because he has this bias, and it's flawed in this way, and this is how his bias is instantiated in his specific methodology.
Yeah, I'm just quoting what you said earlier in the stream back to you. You said, I have an affinity for the New Testament texts. I'm just quoting that back to you.
I know, but my having an affinity doesn't mean that I'm biased in my perception of your argument. And if it does, that still doesn't invalidate my argument. What would invalidate the argument is that my decision criteria would instantiate my specific bias.
So your position is that premise one may be true, but you can't tell because of the word discernible.
My opinion is that right now, premise one is a yardstick without any markings on the yardstick.
So I'll just say remove the word discernible.
Okay.
How does it change premise one? Do you, after we remove the word discernible, do you agree with premise one?
Can you reread premise one without the word discernible?
Sure. If the history of life reveals only constrained natural processes without caring, direction, protection, or intervention by a creator, then creation does not reveal a caring, directing, protecting, or intervening creator. Do you agree with that premise?
No, and here's why I disagree with that premise.
Okay, so you disagree with the New Testament.
No, that's not true. And here's why I disagree with the premise, okay, is because let me analogize it this way. If I'm playing cards against, let's say I'm playing poker, right, and the dealer knows every card in the deck, okay, then I'm not surprised if the dealer wins every hand because they know which cards are going to fall, right? I don't accuse the dealer of having a card up his sleeve. Does that make sense? Now, let me analogize that to my understanding of God. If God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnitemporal, and the architect of all the laws of nature, then any divine outcome, no matter how preposterous, would be achievable by pre-rigging what those laws are and how they manifest. In other words, there's nothing that God should do that would be necessarily a violation of the laws of nature.
Yeah, you're going back to your unfalsifiability and the God who hides because he's so smart argument, and trot that out. That's unfalsifiable. But I think it's not the God of Christian devotion. It's certainly not the God of the Gospel of Matthew, who knows every sparrow that falls and numbers the hairs on everybody's heads.
No. I'm
not the God of Romans 1, whose works are clearly visible to all of creation.
No, wait a second. Omniscience is explicitly in my definition from the starting point. I actually use the word omniscience. That would include.
Yeah, and you say he's smart enough to hide from us when we look for him. I get that.
I mean, I'm not quoting anything that's new. Ludwig von Wittgenstein said the same thing, where he was like, and I quoted this earlier in this very stream, that that objective tools, objective methodologies, which emerge from the sciences, are helpful for depicting and discerning things about anything in this universe. But once you transcend or exit the confines of this universe, that you've now left the realm of what science can predict.
Look, we've already talked about the fact that the universe is everything that exists.
I don't think my theology contradicts the New Testament.
again, if you think that your theology doesn't contradict the New Testament, and yet you've read Romans 1 and you've read Matthew, and you think that that's saying the exact same thing as what I'm saying,
Well,
I don't know what to say to you.
let's move on.
The God of Christian devotion is a God who cares about individual human beings and shepherds them. That is the God of Christian devotion. If your God is not that God, that's fine. That's the deist God. I'm
actually, despite what it may sound like, I'm actually having a really good time having this conversation. But I do want to get. We've got Horus the Hero up next, and I'm gonna leave. Actually, Random Catholic, we never really got to you. So
yeah, if you want to link to the first article, I'll go ahead and put it.
Yeah, put it in the private chat, and I'll put it in the main chat of the argument too. But Random Catholic, let's at least get you up here, and I'll bring up Horus the Hero. Jukubot, I don't know if you're still even on, but I'm going to remove you from the stage if that's okay, so I can bring up Horus the Hero.
Sorry, Tavo, it's not letting me put an actual link. It's just giving me the title.
Well, if you shoot me an email, then I will include it in the description of this video, and I'll include it in the discussion section if I can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's good to chat with you, Jukubot. I hope you heard me saying that it's nice to chat with you. Random, we haven't talked to you, and now Horus the Hero is on as well.
Well, but before I say anything, Tavo, I need you to ask me the question.
Oh, are you at least? Oh, I guess Dr. Kurt left, but are you at least over 18?
I am 18 in base 50.
Okay, fair enough.
God bless.
Good to see you, Random. I'm glad you're on. That really means a lot to me. I'm glad that you joined. And we do have Robin, BBN, and Adrian waiting to join too. So we're gonna get some other people up here very soon.
Can you hear me or no?
Yeah, is that Horace?
Hey, hello.
Hi, Horace. Good to see you. Are you also over 18, Horace?
Correct.
Okay. And what's your theology?
Hieroglyphs.
Yeah, and just atheist.
Oh, okay. Good to have you.
Sort of.
I'm gonna let you go, Tavo. I just came up to say that guy earlier with the obscurantist nonsense where he misquotes the entire study of topology and everything else he tried to do. Dude, that guy was crazy work.
I was trying to steelman his argument, and that's why I brought Max up here. But I think that's a hard. As a hardcore ZFC set theorist, I'm just going to say nonsense, and then I'm just going to lead the panel. How about that? Yeah. I mean, I still enjoy talking with him. And to be honest, I was on the Objective Ethics stream, and I was chatting with him, and I think I gave him too much of a hard time. So I don't think you gave him a hard enough time. I really don't. Oh, okay. Well, I try to be, I try to err on the side of being really nice to people. Yeah, I know. But how are you? But you said you're not sticking around, Random. No, I'm not. I don't need to stick around. I've spoken to the hieroglyph guy before. I don't need to do it again. Okay. Well, I really like
there's other people to speak to as well, right?
Well, no pressure. Like I know Random and I have traded messages, and I just Random. I know you have sort of like you're on a sort of different path right now of like what you're looking into. So
what are you looking into, Random?
I am currently tying knots into a 425 paracord prayer rope.
Well, Random, it does mean a lot to me that you hopped up, and it's nice to hear your voice. And I hope when you're ready to like engage more that that we'll have more engagement. I really appreciate you, Random, and I appreciate you popping up. Well, thanks. I appreciate you too, Tavo. And these conversations are fun. Like you've had an obscurantist sort of pseudo mathematical philosopher on. You've had a radical skeptic, and you've had a guy who doesn't like wine. I'm good. It's been a good show. Okay,
that's been a good show.
On day 3 echoes what a lot of people have said in a lot of chats where I haven't seen you, Random, which is you've been gone too long. It's really good to see you. We all miss you. I'm not the only one who says that, by the way, but shout out to On Day 3, who's got a really fantastic channel as well.
Random, is there any chance you would never like not believe in the Bible God?
No, there's zero chance. Literally zero chance.
And you have no good argument?
I have all the good arguments.
What's your best?
See, here's where I'm just going to drop.
Okay, you got to go.
Okay,
everything out.
Brandon, we'll chat more. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for joining. And
Yeah, no, and I'm enjoying listening to the show.
and Robin is up here too, but
Yeah, can you
let-
Tavo, can you look at the comment section at a like a Kunos or something like that? The comment they
oh,
put
sure,
there.
sure. And after that, we'll do Horus the Hero because I apologize for putting you out. Can they even see Kuna She Guanzura?
Yeah.
What's your question about it, Robin?
Could you look up at their comment? They're one of their comments. Like if you scroll up a while, because I've been trying to get the like.
I don't even want to
Are
repeat
gay
this
people
one.
black?
I wasn't
Should
gonna read it out. No.
Should I
But
delete that comment? I should probably delete that. I'm not sure what it means.
I don't know what it means either. But yeah, I mean, like I would.
Okay, all right, Kuna. If we're somehow misreading that, or if there's maybe a typological.
I don't see anything funny about it, Big Nick, at all. I don't see anything funny. I got a sense of humor. I'm a buzzkill. Well, you're not
No.
supposed to be buzzed
I
in here.
no.
I was
hey,
reading Big Nick's comments about it.
Oh no, Robin. I think that you're right. Maybe I don't want to I don't know Kuna, so maybe I don't know what their comment means. All right, let me delete this comment as well. But Kuna, if you want to re-describe what you're trying to say, you're welcome to. But again, please don't use language that pejorates any individual group that is underrepresented and is already in need of further empowerment. And thank you, Robin, for bringing that to my attention. Do you mind, Robin? Let's do some questions from Horus the Hero, and then we'll.
Well, I was going to just say I didn't come up here with a question for you tonight. I came up here because you said you had a Kentucky accent that you've been working on, and I wanted to hear it. And you forgot to ask me if I was 18 yet, but that's all
I'm
right.
sorry. Yes, Robin, are you 18?
But if you will just do your Kentucky accent, I won't derail the stream anymore because it tears Big Nick up so much.
Well, I'll do you one better than that. If I'll do the rest of the stream with this particular Kentucky accent that I've been working on with some diligence and some assiduity in my own spare time during these last few weeks leading up to this very moment. So I'm particularly pleased that Robin, that you allow me to display this accent in front of my own constituency, as it were.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. That was
Okay,
great.
well,
And
I do my own accent much better, but
yes.
yeah,
And thank
yeah.
you, Big Nick, for letting me know that I live rent free in your empty head. I appreciate it. Bye, Tavo. Love you.
Robin, it's so nice to see you. I hope we chat again, and email me anytime you want to be on, Robin. We'll set something
Yes.
up, and if you ever want to have a conversation, I would love that, Robin. Robin, you're one of the most beloved, congenial people of on these streams. So I'm really glad that you're here.
Thank you. Love
Okay,
you
good
too.
to see you, Robin.
Bye.
All right, I will go ahead and bring up and Horus. I promise you, you're going to get the next few minutes of attention, and I'm going to
That's
bring some other
fine.
people up. But go ahead, Horus. Nice to have you here. I think this is your
No,
first
I'm just
time.
here for this sort of conversation. I mean, are we having a conversation? Are we having a debate? I mean, what are we doing? I like how you're very friendly and polite, and that's cool. But I don't think you really have any sort of good arguments. Like it's just a lot of sort of big mumbo jumbo words. But what's the real point? Like, so what is your best evidence for? And you're sort of going with the God of the Bible, right? Because you sound like you're more sort of deistic rather than theistic.
No, I wouldn't say I'm deistic.
I don't hear you. So do you preach the gospel to people like regularly or no?
No, I'm not a preacher.
How come? That's what Jesus commanded. Jesus said to continue to preach to the gospel.
Can y'all hear me?
To the ends of the world.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
there's
hey,
still-
BBN, hold on a second. We're
yeah,
chatting with
sorry.
Horus for a few minutes, BBN. Then I know I brought you
Yeah, I
up.
know. I'm gonna drop me. I gotta drop because I can't hear you guys well. But pick me right back up.
Okay, we'll bring you back up.
You haven't preached to the ends of the earth yet, so there's still some work to do in sort of the different islands, like specific islands and stuff.
Absolutely.
That was
yeah,
given
yeah,
to the
yeah.
disciples.
Yeah, and I would argue that, Horus, I'm just at a specific place right now where I have sort
Are
of
you-
a degree of
Okay.
calibrated uncertainty.
So with your channel, just sort of quick rundown, are you able to be corrected and sort of learn? Are you still growing, or are you here to convert people to your God? Or are you in the middle, or
there's sort of, that's kind of a loaded question.
what's your
Are
goal?
you saying, would you be able to prove me wrong?
Yeah, like what's your point?
Well,
Are you just doing this sort of for technical reasons as well, just with the channel and stuff, or are you looking for just for to grow the just for sort of monetary reasons? Or are you actually
no.
to
My
grow
channel's not
the-
monetized. There's no Patreon. There's no way people can donate to me. As I've said on several streams, if people want to donate to support the channel, just donate to your favorite charity, and that would be like a really big grace to me. So yeah, but my videos are not monetized. I make $0 off of YouTube. I don't have any Patreon. There's no way to donate to my ministry. I do donate to several charitable causes, but that's
For sure, I hear you. Yeah, I'll throw like a super chat and stuff if you get that going. I'm all about that, but
I will probably never do a super chat unless I'm able to partner with a specific charitable agency, in which case the money would go directly to them and not to me. But like I always tell people this: if you want to super chat at me, just donate to charity and then just give a shout out in a comment. Hey, I gave to this charity and thanks for inspiring me to do so.
yeah, that's cool. You're like really respectful and stuff. Your voice is like encouraging, just sort of the tone and stuff of that. But
that's kind of you to say. Thank you.
So like
a coffee is a way that it could be devoted directly to a charity.
If you wanted to
yeah.
like save me or however you look at it, like maybe you're trying to save me or convert me to Yahweh or the God of the Bible or Jesus. Or I guess like what's the Job deity again? Aloha. It's like used a few different times to just the name there.
Are you talking about Elohim?
No, like Aloha. It's actually used. It's a different name for Elohim because Elohim is used as well, like thousands of times. But
are you open to being proselytized to? Are you open to being saved? What?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm definitely open. I think that's the only reason that I'm, just continuing to be on a journey of learning and stuff. Is just I was once.
Oh, El Elyon.
El Elyon.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Is that the one or El Aloha? There's another one too. I think El Elyon is a different one. Most High, right? And then El Aloha.
Yeah.
So either way, they're the same to you then, or are they one and the same?
Elohim is the plural. Adonai is particularly the glorious God.
Are you then they're all the same to you then? Are you with the Trinity then or no, Tavo?
I tend to believe in monarchical Trinitarianism.
Okay, so a bit different then. Oh, monarchical. Okay. And what do you think about like hell and that? Like for someone like me who sort of like just blatantly rejects it out of like I can't be convinced. I can't believe it's not possible to believe in sort of the tooth fairy mindset. I've tried. I've studied. This and that. There's no excuse. Like what happens to me? Is it sort of eternal damnation? Is it?
Well, let me just say that
annihilation.
on day 3 is commenting that you're welcome to come on his stream anytime. His view is much more Christologically oriented than mine. I would say that he's got a fantastic channel. Yeah.
So, but for you personally,
like
were you the guy that was like with the universal reconciliation? I think there was another guy that sort of has some of the. I've just been listening in on a lot of these conversations on both sides, like Christian and atheism for a while, but you said
I like universalism. There are people who are much better Christians than I am who believe in universalism.
What do you mean better?
Well, there are people who are much more well educated than I am that believe in universalism. I'll tell you, my belief in hell is that it's probably not eternal conscious torment. I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking what do I think hell is, or do I think you will go to hell?
I think both. Yeah, like for me personally, like do you believe in the sort of annihilation, or do you believe in? Is there a second chance?
I tend to believe in annihilationism, but I think there's probably some sort of hybrid to it. I really like universalism though, but I think that there are some.
Unfortunate. And that's one thing I wonder is like I think I said the other guy too is
what is it? I didn't really get to finish, but
sorry.
Go ahead. No, we can go on to your next question.
Just I was agreeing with like more Christians and Jews and Christians and Muslims should be preaching that because I think it's in the Talmud as well. But within all the Abrahamic religions, it can be agreed upon that universal reconciliation that can be a doctrine across the 3 branches of the 3 like main parent branches. And then
I don't know if I believe in the heart. So there are like Valentin Tomberg was a really great Christian who wrote, who was very well learned, and he was a polymath, and he spoke all the ancient languages, Koine Greek, ancient Hebrew, biblical Hebrew.
Nice, yeah.
And he made the argument that that the work of Jesus is not done until hell is completely empty. So that was the argument he made. Origen actually said something that was very similar many centuries before that. So other people have echoed this sentiment. Soren Kierkegaard is another individual who is a fairly hardcore Christian. A lot of people don't realize that the roots of existentialism were born out of Soren Kierkegaard's interpretation of the theological messages of Jesus. But the point is that he's another individual who believed in universalism. I don't know that I believe in sort of hardcore universalism. In other words, there are probably some souls that maybe aren't salvageable, but that's a little bit beyond what my scope would be. But I think if there is a domain of hell, then it's probably a domain of annihilationism.
But like without dabbling like into the mystery realm, like for someone like me who like there's no excuse. I mean, I was like literally grew up around thousands of people who, you know, have preached the gospel. I've definitely read the book like in Hebrew and Greek as well. I mean, I just, you know, it's almost like I feel compassion for my old self too.
Well, what's
like
your
once you've been on both sides, you sort of want to. I'm not trying to convert people to atheism, but
sure. What's your reason for rejecting?
That's where I was going to go. What's holding you back, bro?
Well, there's a whole assortment. I think the list just kept piling up, and
well, you know,
bigger.
This conversation is a bit of an introduction, right? This is like 1v1 conversations that are like 15 to 20 minutes each, so we probably won't get super deep into all of them. But if you want to pick one out, and you said this is the one I'd really like to talk to you about, I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm sort of on the other end as well. Like I think there's a sort of a shift happening in the world too, where just with the internet and sort of, you know, the advancement of knowledge, and the sciences, right? Whether it's planetary science or. You know,
I mean, I'm a university professor. I'm an editor for 2 scholarly journals in my field. I've published over 50 peer-reviewed. Well, that's not true. They're not all peer-reviewed. Some of them are like book chapters, but I've published a lot, right? And so there's nothing that I've found in Christianity that contradicts the sciences, if that's helpful.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what about like all of like just the first few chapters of Genesis alone? Let's just go with those, like Genesis 1, 2, and 3, right?
What's a specific thing in Genesis that you find contradicts the science?
Well, it doesn't match modern scientific
7 days.
The 7 days, is that what you take?
Oh no, there's a whole list. I'll dig up the old list here if I can find it. But no, just right off the top of my head, obviously. Well, first of all, it was always assumed that there's sort of this anthropomorphic creator deity in the background. No one had to say. No peasant ever had to say. It was always the emperors, whether it was the Hellenistic or the Egyptian or the Roman, Greco-Roman, and so forth. I don't know if there was ever really an atheist emperor until the Middle Ages or whatnot, sort of to get into the wars a bit. But it was always just assumed, right? People even assume, like secular people.
Yeah, I mean, almost every. You're actually touching on a real sociological and historical trend, which is that almost every religion comes from the reign of a specific ruler, right? Buddha was probably an oligarch, right? Krishna, same thing. Muhammad was definitely a conqueror king, and almost every religion fits the same pattern, except for Jesus. Jesus, to my knowledge, is the only person who didn't become essentially a self-appointed ruler of his own society. I find that
Jesus could be like an archetype of people say like Osiris and Horus.
No, that's an argument that's been almost everybody has repudiated that argument. Even the hardcore adherents have left
like
that argument.
The zeitgeist wasn't done very properly. Originally, very terrible.
Even Richard Carrier, who has himself a very problematic history, has left that argument in the dust. So a lot of people, there's very few people who the dying and rising gods was a phrase that became popular for a while. Everyone has left that alone, and almost every credible scholar ascribes that argument to parallelomania. So
you know what I find too? It's like the zeitgeist did a disservice because there was
did a disservice to it. Yeah, but
there was a lot of sort of it's like the History Channels or the Ancient Aliens. They've done a disservice because they're touching on they're sort of touching on the mystery realm, but they have some stuff about the megaliths and some very interesting new discoveries. But then they're really trying to create this story that is just for profit and for the clicks, right? Clickbait. and it's worked. But there's no evidence for a lot of it. There's just no evidence for the whole alien story and this and that.
Almost every credible scholar believes that there really was a historical Jesus. I have not been able to find a single scholar in the United States or Canada who denies the historicity of Jesus. Richard Carrier is probably the biggest voice of the mythical Jesus.
Yeah, but just keep in mind logically.
Let me finish the thought, because it is an important one, because it often gets overlooked. Richard Carrier has published only 3 studies in the scholarly literature. That is a very, very meager academic output. He would not, that wouldn't get you promoted at any university. But none of his publications in academia, none of them, 0, argue for a mythical Jesus. I found a lot of publications that argue for a mythical Jesus, but 0% of them are in the scholarly peer-reviewed literature. Okay, so almost there's really no reason to say that there's not a historical Jesus. I think that the calibration of saying we're almost certain just means we are as certain that there was a historical Jesus that we could be about anything in the ancient world. So I don't find any compelling reason whatsoever to depart from the conclusion that Jesus was a real historical individual.
So you want to go with that? You want to go with sort of, because I am a pretty serious mythicist. I think Carrier. Well, you keep in mind there's only been 100 years since anyone's ever even wrote a book on mythicism, and considering the reasons why, right? The Catholic Church and its iron rod.
No. What do you mean? People write books about the mythicism of Jesus all the time.
Are you kidding me? No one was even allowed to write about the sciences and
they market those books
during the Middle Ages. Are you kidding me? The greatest minds in the 1500s, 1600s were like hung at the stake. Even Galileo, they were like. You know what I mean? The Catholic Church wasn't even open to a lot of this,
for a mythical Jesus
new
first
knowledge.
Arose. Yeah, the argument for a mythical Jesus first arose in the 19th century.
Yeah, but the connections to like the Jesus only exists in art and through the Byzantine Empire, and then it spreads through the propaganda throughout all the empires throughout the world.
That's not true.
Well, Christianity is a military order. That's its main symbolism in the beginning. It starts primarily with a military symbol.
Hold on, Horus.
So it's always been that.
Well, hold on.
Where did you get that from?
The governor
it's the symbol, Constantine's symbol when he combined.
Christianity was around before Constantine.
The Imperial Roman Army was what Constantine was involved in.
Let's slow it down a little bit, Horus, because the governor of Galilee, the province, who was the governor about 10 or 15 years after the death of Jesus, who was there in the city where Christianity first started, believed in a real historical Jesus. That's Josephus, right?
Let's go with that. The hypothetical that there was a guy in the background, and let's go back 2,000 years, right? In that era, and we know that a lot of the compilations of the books and a lot of the sort of Nicene councils and a lot of the real doctrines aren't even being argued over. Like
those are all
Trinity and salvation.
Those are all really separate arguments. So for
the sake of time, we won't even need to get into that. We can just go with the fact that
for the sake of time, because we're over 2 hours, let's hone in on one argument.
Okay, one argument. Well, you seem to go in that direction, but I was going to bring up several, and you could pick one.
Objective Ethics, which is a really great channel, says Richard Carrier has reviewed papers in multiple academic fields. That's not true.
I love his work.
He's published 3 papers in the peer-reviewed literature. None of them are about the mythical argument for Jesus. None of them. Not a single one of his 3 academic publications. He's published a lot. But he's never published. Hold on. He's never published in the peer-reviewed scholarly literature. That's what I'm saying.
That's fine. That doesn't mean the credentialism is not something I believe in.
That's fine as well. But I think at the very least, that should make you a little suspicious.
We can recognize a polymath when we see it. We don't need credentialism and people with PhDs to pretend they.
I don't know.
Yes, and don't get me wrong. Obviously, we need that in all the fields.
Horace, let's try to focus on a single argument just in the interest of time.
Absolutely. So I have a few arguments here. So there's a lot more than this, but we can go with a lot of the sort of the first argument is the fallacies and assumptions related to anthropomorphic deities. So that's the main one there. That it goes on and on. But the next one, we already touched on this, but we can go a lot deeper.
Let me touch on that one briefly.
Hold on. I just want to go over the first one. You can choose one, okay? Because there a lot of them are interesting here. You might learn something. You can look into this later as well. You don't need me to preach at you here. Everyone has the internet, right? I'm not the only guy on Google. So in Genesis 1-3, I don't say this is like this is not blatant deception or lying. This is just basically ignorance. And there's 9 different types. They just don't know what cosmology and sort of astrophysics and explaining matter and all these things. So the science and knowledge versus Genesis 1-3, you're living in 2 different realities here. Like when you step into reality, and there's things we don't know. We don't know everything. I don't know everything. There's a mystery realm, but there's a realm we can prove. And a lot of people don't live in this simple, serious realm. They live in sci-fi land, right? So Genesis 1-3 is a part of that realm. It's not based on anything realistic. These people don't know anything about how stars and the sun and animals work. The sun was created after the earth, which is impossible, because it's the only way the earth even got here, right? So we can go into that. That's a big one. Another one is the whole thing about the paradox of salvation, right? And how different Christians.
Well, how about this, Horus? Which one would you like us to talk about?
Well, we were going into the sort of Jesus talk. Let's go into that. There isn't one. The reason that I'm a mythicist, because if we only have the New Testament, if you've ever only had the New Testament, you're on an island your entire life, and you're the only one there. So your ethics are based on planetary ethics. You have no one to hurt, no one to injure. You can only hurt yourself. Your ethics are not based on anything in the Bible except planetary ethics.
I know, but
if you try to read the Bible and be convinced of the Jesus in the Bible, there isn't just one Jesus.
Well, Horus, here's what I would suggest. We've been talking for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're just getting into it here.
Oh my God! You're all over the place, bro. He's all over the place.
We're just starting the argument. What one do you want to start?
No. Here's let me finish.
I have every doctrine.
I thought you was up here trying to get saved up in here. We're talking about some soul up in here.
Saved from what? Let's go to that direction.
Let me finish my sentence, Horus.
Well, he's getting distracted. He said that I need to be saved from. What are we getting saved from? Let's define that first, please.
No, Horus.
I'm sorry, Doctor. Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
I'm trying not to have like 20 different conversations with you. But what I would say,
do the walk of shame and back off, because until you actually have something legitimate, stop interrupting. So the many Jesuses, right? Well, there's more than one, and I can prove that here.
You need to check yourself, bro.
Hold on, Horus.
You need to check yourself.
Let me finish what I was going to say initially, Horus.
No, I don't need to check. I don't need to be saved from anything. That's what you're assuming that I need to be saved from something.
No, Horus. Let me just finish what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Let me just finish my sentence.
There's no boogeyman to be saved from.
Let me finish my sentence, Horus.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was going to say to you, Horus, is we're at 15 minutes. We've bounced around to a lot of arguments. That's totally okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're over 2 hours. I'm happy to have like a longer conversation about this with you. And I would just suggest let's just send me an email. We'll do a live stream. I'll focus more attention on you. I can go through all your arguments one by one, and I'm happy to devote more time. Like, you sound like you're a really nice guy. I'm happy to have a longer conversation.
So you would do a one-on-one with like every argument?
I mean, I'll commit to at least a couple hours of conversation if you'd like.
If you seriously went through every argument thing and you weren't suspicious, or you didn't start saying, you got to remember the only way that the number one, what's the number one way that people are sort of deconverted, or they drop away from sort of Christianity and the Abrahamic deity? Well, the number one reason, right?
That's a good question. It's because of creds, right? That's why people adopt.
No, what's the number one reason? Let's just a quick reminder, because this is important.
No, it's based on sociological studies. What I'm saying.
No, you read the book. Just read the book, and you'll find out that it's not coherent at all. It's illogical, incoherent, confusing, and completely impossible according to the modern sciences. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I'm a scientist.
It's completely.
Give me a sentence. Give me a sentence in the Bible that's impossible.
It completely does a disservice to morals and ethics. That's all it does. That's a different morals and ethics actually are. Then they have to end up unlearning all the nonsense they've been taught because their grandparents taught them about, which diet is correct and which homosexual to kill.
Let me quote some actual science to you, Horus, because this is important. People leave any religion and join any other religion for a number of other factors. Okay, it's not because of reason.
Mostly fear. They're just scared about their friends.
No, let me finish, Horus. Come on, you gotta let me finish at least. No, their reasons are often post hoc arguments.
Well, you're making fallacies. You're like, it's a number of reasons. It's not. It's mainly fear, and we all know that.
No, there are real.
They're scared. They're born into it.
There are real studies that have been done to answer this question: why do people join religions? And
because they're scared. They think that they're going to burn in hell forever because their grandparents.
Well, I'm telling you, what you're saying contradicts the published research on this.
That's just an assumption.
Yeah, they're afraid of missing out on the church service. Their friends, the community.
Well, when we talk again, I'll happily cite the literature, but there is real scholarly literature on this question, and it talks about why people switch religions, why people leave religions, why people join religions, and it talks about why people deconvert to atheism. And there's and it's not just because of actual reasons. In fact, you usually make the decision first. and then the reasons are sort of a post hoc thing that you kind of tack on, and that goes across all theological disciplines.
Right. Yeah, it's not forced, right? The more you learn in knowledge and the more you just gain an understanding, you understand how things work. Like Christianity is just a barely new religion. It's only been around for 2,000 years. It's nothing. Egyptian religion runs for around for tens of thousands of years. That's whether people like it or not or believe it or not. There's tens of thousands of Egyptian autographs and signatures from tons of different pharaohs and scribes and everybody. How many are there for the Bible? And anyone in the Bible? Not one. Not
thank
any
you
author,
for being so open-minded.
and not one person in the Bible. Not a single character author for any signature autograph. Crazy.
Okay,
So,
all right, Horus. Here's what I
Appreciate
would
your
suggest.
open-mindedness.
Here's what I would suggest. Just check out my CTF argument and shoot me an email, and we'll have a longer conversation about this. Because I feel like I'm happy to talk about any of these arguments individually, but we're just this is just sort of a this is sometimes in this format we just do quick conversations, and you know, I think you've got a lot of questions. I'm happy to go through them one by one, but I mean, if I say something and I'm citing literature, like you can ask me to look it up and I'll show you the studies that I'm citing. But people turn to atheism because of there's a lot of different arguments, but it's not just because I was afraid and now I'm not afraid anymore. That's not what it is. It's not because of, oh, I saw reason. So let's do this. Let's bring up Jay in the conversation, and then because I'm kind of coming close to the time.
Can I just like ask you though, like you actually still believe in like sort of like demons and like miracles and like earth sort of like, what do they call them? Natural disasters. Remember it's called, you know what it's called? It's called a natural process. And it doesn't give a shit what humans think.
Oh, all right. So we try to avoid profanity on
sorry. I didn't know that was a bad word. Because but yeah, it doesn't really, like, that's a human projection thinking that the world evolves around humans. Imagine crocodiles probably think the same thing, right? Crocodiles.
That's called anthropocentrism.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that's flawed. Yeah. We should not be anthropocentric in our perspective about
imagine if like robins and seagulls were thinking like the world evolves around them, which, that's why it's
they don't really have robins.
No, they're smarter than us. They're aligned with the natural order of the invisible spectrum.
Well, they don't have theory of mind, so they don't really understand that.
Yeah, but their brains are like more highly evolved, and they understand an eagle can see beyond the spectrum of what we can see, and it understands like cooperation and harmony beyond, and ethics beyond what humans even understand. Like it's elevated.
Ants understand cooperation and harmony. That doesn't mean they're more moral than we are.
Moral is just a sort of, you're just trying to use virtue ethics. You're trying to say that it's a personal connection, whereas planetary ethics is about these creatures realize that the benefit for the entire ecosystem and themselves and everyone along with it. That's why lions don't just hunt zebras all day long.
Wait a second. I don't think
zebras don't just get hunted all day long by lions.
I don't think
because the lions understand. Yes, the lions understand that would damage the ecosystem. They hunt more when the animals are more plentiful. That's been proven.
No. The cat family overall has less of a theory of mind. So they don't,
but they're more aligned with the ecosystem itself, realizing that
you can
they
say
hunt for others.
That their behavior is more aligned. I don't know that I buy that their understanding is more aligned.
Of course, they share. They don't just hunt what they don't need. Like they're just that's called ethics and morality. But you were saying they don't have ethics. You're saying that ants don't have morality when they're more aligned, which is what morals are. Morals are just a fancy word that people put on the sun for its alignment and moral order and its sort of eternal cyclical system. And the animals are more involved in that than humans.
Lions don't share.
Don't be jealous of animals. Don't be casting down snakes and stuff like that when you have no understanding of wisdom and like how these ancient creatures are like sacred. You know what I mean? Now they just abuse them.
I don't. Hey,
there's a reason why
I'm a vegetarian. I have deep respect for animals.
Okay, I did. Yeah, that's awesome too. Yeah, I was a vegan for like 7 years, but.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I respect animals. I don't know that I can score them on the intelligence scale as highly as you would, but I can say.
Well, they're in on this too. You think humans arguing and getting nowhere is doing anything, where the animals are in the background actually solving the world's problems and the whales are sort of coming back and balancing the oceans again because of the human whale connection, right, and laws and stuff like that. So things are happening in the background. We might not see it because humans are. About what?
About
the whales coming back,
harmonizing animals.
Are you kidding me? The whales were almost extinct. It would have like almost the whales.
Why don't you just let him finish letting his start? Gosh dang, we like to interrupt. Go ahead, Chris. Speak your mind, bro.
As an example, tigers in the jungle will cooperate when there's enough food to go around. When the food gets scarce, they will fight, and the weaker ones will be driven from the area. The same is true in the African plains. When the food is prevalent, they cooperate. When it's not, they go away. The same is true with polar bears. When the food in the middle of the summer, when they've got full bellies, they go onto an island. There's actually a place where they go and they play fight and they muck around, and then they start needing to fatten up for the winter again, and they spread out and they'll kill each other because they need the food to survive for the next year.
Well,
so it's just not true.
We're at 2 hours and 20 minutes, so we're probably not going to go a super huge amount longer. But I do want to get Jay and I Am Batman up here, and then we'll get Dark Light.
So Tavo, you want me to step down then?
I'll drop down.
Well, whoever wants to drop, and we'll get some more people. But Horus, I
would
we're
way
really
off topic here. We can stick into the. Do you want to go over that then? The many Jesuses, and do you want to hear my argument and sort of discoveries? I don't think you've heard.
I mean, probably not right now.
God bless Chris.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you say in the future.
God bless you, Chris. Good to see you, and I'll keep you in my prayers. But Horus, if you want, I'm happy to talk with you in the future about this stuff. I'm happy to have more conversations with you. Sometimes there's only a certain amount that we can cover here. But I would ask you just, if we do talk, here's my two suggestions. Number one, try to stay very open-minded about stuff. And number two, try to talk about one argument at a time. So if you say, here, let's have a conversation. Here's the things we're going to talk about. And you can make a list and we can go through them one by one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, Jay, you've not said anything yet. Jay, do you want to say hi really quick, Jay?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good to see you, Jay. I'm sorry that we didn't get you up here and chatting sooner.
No, it's all good. It's my first time, so I'm just chilling, relaxing here. What's happening? Thanks for taking my call.
No, I'm glad you're here, Jay. Let's take on some questions that you got.
So my question, if I'm seeing your YouTube title, you're a former atheist or something like that?
That's correct, yeah.
So, okay, so my question is, what caused you to go to an atheist route? And I'm assuming now that you're not anymore?
Yeah, I probably became an atheist when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it was mostly because the religion that I was surrounded by, I'll tell you that the most proximate cause of my atheism was the doctrine of hell that I was exposed to, which was a particularly cruel and vicious doctrine. And I found it just to be so morally repugnant that I rejected God at that point, and I left religion when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And I would say for about 2 years, I've been sort of back on the path of being a theist.
Okay, that makes sense. A lot of people go through that through their life. Like the people around you, they say they're Christian, but their action doesn't reflect it. So it kind of repulses people away from their religion. So it makes sense.
That's true. Yeah. And I was not Christian. I was never actually Christian. It was a different religion that I was raised in, for whatever that's worth. Okay.
Yeah, I guess you would fall under all religion when you actually look at it. Because a lot of
I wouldn't say
these
that now.
days-
Like I was an atheist, and then I became sort of a theist, and then I drifted more and more towards an affinity for the Christian teachings, and now I would say I'm essentially pretty certain that Christianity is the correct theology, and I have a very high degree of certainty that if there is any religion that's true, then it's Christianity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But in most religion, a lot of kids, especially when they're young, they're like forced to go to church and, worship God and all these other things. But then their parents or people around them won't reflect it. So it makes sense why a lot of people would turn away. But my thing now, there was a guy earlier, I think his name was Curtis, Dr. Curtis or whatever his name
Dr. Kurt,
was.
yeah, Dr. Kurt, yeah.
Is he really a doctor guy? Do you know?
I've not seen his credentials, but I trust that he's a doctor. Yeah.
Okay, it makes sense why I would think like that.
What do you mean?
A lot of people that I find that are like, well, how would I put that? That I went through the educational system. They're like doctrine. They're programmed to be a certain type of way. So no matter what you say to them, they will never change. And I guess you shouldn't try to change a person because it just gets worse for them. Whatever. But
yeah, I mean, I would.
Good people.
I would say people can be stubborn, but you can be stubborn no matter what your field is. I mean, I'm all. You may not know this. I'm also a physician. I'm a university professor and a physician.
yeah, I heard you were saying you write a lot of pieces or papers, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing related to theology. So don't misinterpret that as me having any theological credentials.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking my call, and I don't have much to say. I'll check out more of your things, but I like what you're doing.
Oh, thanks,
You know,
thanks, Jay. I appreciate the encouragement. What's your theology?
I don't know if I have a theology. I just follow Christ, and that's pretty much it. His way is the way, and he told us to follow him. So I just
Hey,
follow him.
amen.
That's pretty much it. Stay present and follow his teachings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that yeah, if you're interested, my biggest contribution to this space is the CTF argument. Basically, what I do in that argument is I look at all academic historiographical arguments for every theology, and I kind of weigh them using historical evaluative criteria. So I look at about 18 different religions, and then
Yeah.
I weigh those religions on historiographical criteria. Yeah, so I kind of distill every religion down to a set of historical miracle claims, and I say which one is the most validated. I haven't published the most recent version of the CTF argument, but the one that I published on my channel, and Macintosh Pro is kind enough to highlight it. So thanks very much. I've actually been updating it, but yeah, check out the CTF argument. It's basically applying historical criteria to miracle claims of each religion. And what I did, and I would say this as a professor, what I did when I saw all that evidence is I gained a very high degree of certainty that if there is any religion that's true, that it's Christianity. In other words, any other set of historical claims is probably more tenuous than Christianity based on, I think, very objective evaluative criteria.
Okay, so I got a question actually. What do you think about and this might sound weird, but I think it's the only way to put it. What country do you live in? Like, so I get a better understanding.
I'm in North America. If that helps.
Okay, so what do you think about the Muslims and the other religions that are hijacking in like North America, especially like the state in Canada?
I don't. I mean, I don't. If you're asking, like, do I think that Muslims are hijacking any? I don't think I would word it that way. I think Islam is spreading in some parts of the world. It's mostly spreading due to fecundity. I think the Quran is a fairly problematic text, and I think I would just probably stop there. But I would never want to characterize it as like that. There's like. I think there's some very Islamophobic rhetoric that could be potentiated if we're not careful. And some of that rhetoric can make people think that, that Muslims are invading or they're trying to capture our country or they're trying to push us out, the replacement theory. And I would never want to go into that. I would never want to like do anything that even inadvertently feeds that argument.
But it's not even that we're going to invert it in, it's just we're seeing it, right? If you look in the UK, it's happening. It's not like it's not happening, we're saying it's happening, it's not happening.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on that. I probably couldn't talk authoritatively about that. So
okay,
yeah,
okay, we'll leave
I think there are a lot of problematic teachings in Islam. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
If in a vacuum, I would not, it would take a lot for me to think that something in the Quran is a verified thing. I would say if I had to rank its truthfulness or the verisimilitude of its claims theologically, I would rank them pretty low out of the 18 world religions that I've looked at.
Okay. All right, man. I won't take up much more time, and we'll chat again, I guess.
Okay. I hope we chat again, Jay. Yeah, thanks for hopping up. I appreciate the kind words.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too. You too. Well, we got Darklight on. Chronicle, you just hopped on, but I think we're probably not going to be able to add you because we're already at 2.5 hours. So I know you came on earlier and then we didn't get to you, but if it's okay, Chronicle, can we just chat some more with you next week? Because it's already 2.5 hours. I was running a fever earlier. I feel like I'm sweating bullets because my fever broke. But anyways, Darklight, let's chat with you a little bit. I know you have a new book coming out. I saw you on the OE channel.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist.
Monotheist.
I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist.
Oh, true monotheist. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wrote a book recently, right?
I'm still working on it.
Oh, okay. What's the underpinning of your? We're probably going to wrap things up fairly soon. But what's the underpinning of your beliefs, or what do you want to tell us about what beliefs brought you to that point?
So I believe in a construct of the one true creator, but I did not come to it through the dogmas and scriptures of Abraham. I consider followers of Abraham a blood cult of sin worshippers. Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah are desert war gods of hypocrisy, not the actual one true creator.
And what evidence brought you to that standpoint?
The supposed holy books of the Abrahamic religions are just full of fallacies, scientific false claims from a supposedly all-knowing God.
Well, I'm a scientist. I publish scientific literature. I'm a physician, and I've published in about 30 to 50 papers in the peer-reviewed literature, depending on how you count. If you count like book chapters and such, I don't know that there's any. What's something that's maybe anti-scientific or non-scientific that you'd want to talk about?
Well, like the
or if you want, you can talk about your book. I'm kind of curious to learn more about that too.
Like the Dr. Kurt brought up earlier, talking about the order of creation, like the light being created before the sun type deal.
I don't think that was Dr. Kurt, but
what was that? That was the other guy then.
Yeah, but I believe, like many early Christians believe, like many people in the first century believe, like the school of Alexandria, which was the main school of Hellenistic Judaism, that these stories in the Old Testament are meant to be allegorical. That's how they were taken. And then in the 19th and early 20th century, there was this movement of biblical fundamentalism that argued for the first time, mind you, for the verbal and plenary interpretation school of thought, which was the argument that the New Testament is not only inerrant, that the Bible is not only inerrant, but that also, in addition to that, it's also literally truth as it's written, like the days need to be taken as literal days. Now, this was at the time a rather radical thesis. Now, this is not something that happened organically within Christianity. This was actually something that was advocated for by Milton and Lyman Stewart, who were two oil tycoons. And they invested about the equivalent of $300 million in current USD dollars to try to get this very literal perspective on the Bible to spread and become the root of fundamental Christianity. And that peaked at the Niagara Creed, which was in around the year 1900. And that was an argument that, again, you had to take the Bible as literal truth in addition to it being inerrant. So that's a fairly new debate. That's a fairly new argument. But even like Philo of Alexandria and other major Jews at the time of the first century, even before the time of Jesus, took the Old Testament rather to be allegorical. And many early Christians believed the same thing. Say Augustine of Hippo, who's one of my, who's in my ethnic group ancestrally, argued that we should be very deferential to the sciences and that we should interpret scripture around the sciences. And he argued that any scripture that contradicts a scientific revelation was therefore to be contextually sort of mitigated in that fashion. So, for instance, he didn't believe that Adam was literally the first man. He believed that that this was an allegory, and this was the way that many early Christians took it. The very fact that in 1979 that there had to be a Chicago Statement on Biblical Inerrancy, which was, again, the root of modern U.S. Christian fundamentalism suggests that the tabula rasa, prima facie perspective about the Bible was not literal interpretation, but rather allegorical.
Yeah, there's just, I would say the majority of Christians today do take the Bible to be both literal and inerrant.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment, but it does depend on what country you're in. In the United States, certainly the prevailing trend is Christian fundamentalism, and fundamentalism does take a very literal approach, but that wasn't always the case. To me, it's for something to disprove Christianity, it has to disprove Christianity intrinsically. In other words, if it just disproves what some people believe or what some people practice in Christianity, then I don't take that as a disproof. It has to disprove the core tenets of Christianity to be something that disproves Christianity.
Well, I do not submit or capitulate to any of the Abrahamic theologies or religions personally. But really quick before we go on, I would like to say best of luck to Chris for his surgeries. I got banned a couple times for saying I don't believe in prayer, essentially, and I didn't mean nothing by it. I don't believe in prayer, but best of luck to Chris.
Yeah, Chris has been in my prayers. I don't think this is a channel where you'll ever get banned by anyone for saying that you don't believe in prayer.
I literally got banned. This is my third or fourth account that I've jumped on because every single one of my other accounts got banned for saying I don't believe in prayer.
Hopefully not on my channel.
Yeah. Just now, yeah.
Oh, somebody banned you on my channel for saying I don't believe in prayer?
Yeah. I was about 4 times. This is like my fourth account that I've jumped on to get on here.
Oh, all right. Oh, it sounds like what people are saying in the chat is that you got banned because you were saying like the F word.
Well, no, I started that after I got banned about 3 times. Then I started getting pissed off.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I would just say that, we try to be very courteous here. We try to, it seemed, I apologize that if you got banned for something as trivial as that, but it sounds
I did.
Yeah. But we do try to be courteous. I try to like endorse that in the chat. And I don't see the reason why you got banned, but I didn't ban you myself, but I would say as long as you're being courteous, I generally don't like profanity on this channel. And it's really more from a standpoint of, well, it is from a standpoint of decorum, but it's also from the standpoint of just, monetization and stuff like that. And
I can respect it totally. I didn't really start cussing until after about the 3rd time I got banned. I got pissed off, and generally I show people the same respect that they show me, because I do not submit to the Abrahamic religions. So upon hearing that, sometimes people come at me sideways, and if they do, I'll bounce right back at them sideways. But besides that, I try to show people the same respect that they show me.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. Are there any other, what are some other things that, so we've talked about sort of your negative arguments against Abrahamic, religions. What are your positive arguments for your own personal theology?
Yeah, so I've been developing it working on some of the ideas for a while. But I've really been hardcore developing it for about a year now. But I kind of put aside trying to tear down essentially the Abrahamic theologies, and I just started building my own. I do intend to circle back around to writing books to combat the Abrahamic religions, but before I do that, I'm providing something else that can serve as a more beneficial theology and a more accurate proposition of a concept of the one true creator.
Yeah, I would always advocate for caution. And the reason why I would advocate for that is if anyone, and this is not a judgment about you personally, but if anyone came up to me and said, I am writing a book to replace the Bible, I would always advise caution in that perspective, because, I've seen personally, people that turn into, I just wonder about, I would always advocate for a very high level of epistemic humility. I try to aspire to a high level of epistemic humility myself. So I advise that for other people.
Well, the Christian Bible itself was written to replace the Torah.
I don't know that I would agree with that. There was a study done by Berezensky that looked at the Gospel of Mark and compared it to the Torah in using quantitative parameters, and it was in the same genre. So computationally, when we look at genre features, Mark seems to match the theological tone and genre of the Torah. I don't know that I would agree that it's a replacement.
Well, just as Jesus was created to replace Yahweh, they are actually totally different gods. Christians appropriated the Judaic Yahweh and created their own God and called it Christ. Then they go around telling everyone that you can't create God in the image that you want, which is hilarious because that's exactly what Christians did.
Well, I don't know that that is what scholars would advocate for. And the reason why is a lot of Jesus' language in multiple independent streams is very deferential to the Judeo-Christian God, right? Or the Judean God, I should say at the time, right? He's very deferential to the Father. So I don't know that that's really verified by the scholarly perspective on the New Testament or its origin, that the Christians were trying to repudiate or replace God the Father.
That depends on which scholar that you conjure up, because of course scholars are very, very diverse, right? You got scholars that support different positions.
Yeah, and I'm quoting very atheistic scholars, including like Bart Ehrman, Paula Fredrickson. I mean, textual criticism is a very densely academic field. So again, I would always argue for epistemic humility, right? In other words, there are scholars who do say different things. There's a little bit of diversity in the field, but these are scholars who have read the Bible several times using a lot of different evaluative criteria and are very familiar with many other theological movements from the first century. So there's a lot of context that plays into their conclusions. So when people say, oh, I read the Bible and it's trying to say this, I always say, wait a second, you know, what is your reason for saying that? I would argue that there are so many callbacks to the relevant Old Testament resources, the relevant Torah resources, and Jesus himself is deferential across multiple independent streams. That suggests that there's deference to the Old Testament resources rather than a desire to replace them. That's my own personal read. I think that's congruent with what most scholars say, including scholars who are very atheistic on that side of the spectrum.
That sounds like an appeal to authority fallacy a little bit. And I do not require the validation of scholars to have my own opinion about it.
Sure. And here's why it's not an appeal to authority, is because when you make an appeal to authority, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm citing three different reasons, right? The first reason is the fact that Jesus is deferential in his language about the Father across multiple streams. Okay. The second is like the genre parallels. The third argument is the fact that there are so many callbacks to the Old Testament in the New Testament, right? The book of Isaiah was referred to by early Christians as the fifth gospel. So those are the reasons. But here's why it's not an appeal to expert testimony, right? If somebody asks my opinion about a very medically esoteric topic and I render my opinion, that is an evidentially important and consequential conclusion that I'm providing them because I have an expert perspective, right? So to say that something is an appeal to authority, it is a fallacy, but it's only a fallacy depending on how you use it. In other words, if I say, I have a right to steal this car, and you say, what gives you that right? And you say, well, I went and talked to my priest and he said morally that was okay. That's an appeal to authority fallacy, okay? But if it's in a field where expertise is actually relevant, then it is no longer fallacious to perform an appeal to authority. You're saying, these are what the experts say. This is why they say this, but they've studied this for a long time. Now, the reason why this is important, because having done this channel for a very short time of about a year or so, I've talked to a lot of people who are like, oh, the Bible says this, and the Bible is this, and Christians were saying this. And there's a lot of arguments that people throw out that are completely erroneous, you see? So that's why I say, wait a second, are we really studying all the relevant resources? Are we really steeped in what is understood through the lens of textual criticism, through the hermeneutical key of Jesus in the Old Testament? Are we combining those to have an enlightened perspective about this? Or are we just saying, this is my worldview, and I'm cobbling together evidence to support my worldview? Again, it's just an argument for epistemic humility.
I find that hilarious anytime Christians talk about humility while incessantly demanding that their God is the most prevalent and praiseworthy of all the presented gods all over the world. That's quite hilarious.
Well, again, the reason why I think that Christianity is more valid than other religions is not because of my own personal feelings about it. It's because of the CTF argument, which is the comparative theological framework. Now, that's why I took 18 different theologies and I interpreted those theologies through the lens that academic historians use. So in other words, what is the historiographical evidence and this historiographical evaluative criteria that's applicable to that evidence across different evaluative criteria and across 18 different religions, right? So I looked at all the major world religions. I looked at 17 when I did the CTF argument, but now it's up to 18. But I looked at all those arguments and I essentially built a comparative evaluative evidence-based framework looking at each religion through evidence-based analysis. So that's actually why I came to that conclusion. Now, I won't recap all the evaluative criteria, but I would recommend that you check out the CTF argument. So in other words, I'm not saying, oh, you have to respect my opinion above all others. Do your own research, but feel free to check out the research that I've done, which is a compilation. It's not my own unique analysis, but I'm compiling historiographical standards to apply to the question of which religion is best.
Well, the thing about Christianity, it's all based on Jesus, and Jesus did not fulfill one single of the Judaic prophecies required for the Messiah in the original context, which it was presented. And even if he did, and I'm just granting, even if he did, the Messiah was never supposed to supplant or replace Yahweh. It was the Messiah is a totally different station and position than the actual Godhead itself.
Well, I would agree with that as well, but I don't think that I don't think Jesus was trying to replace Yahweh, first of all, and second of all, the issue of prophecy fulfillment is an interesting thing. So let's ask the question first: does prophecy fulfillment provide a useful yardstick in delineating which prophets we should trust and which we shouldn't? Okay, that's the real question. In other words, does prophecy fulfillment work well as an evaluative criteria? Rabbi Akiva, the most esteemed rabbi of the 2nd century, said that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, right? And then in medieval times, what was his name? Sabbatai Zevi was proclaimed by many, many Jews to be the Messiah at that point in time. In the year 2004, many, many rabbis in the Chabad Lubavitch said that the Messiah is here, he's alive, and it was Menahem Schneerson. Now, there's one of two possibilities. Okay, so all the Christians will look at prophetic fulfillment and say that prophetic fulfillment happened, right? Atheists and Jews will look at the prophetic fulfillment criteria and say the prophetic fulfillment didn't happen. If you look at Jews who are very learned, they will actually say that there are several different individuals, depending on which Jew you're talking to, who have fulfilled prophecy. So that to me means that you can't use it independently as a yardstick. Now, I personally, having read the Bible in the Old Testament Biblical Hebrew, I've read Isaiah in Old Testament Biblical Hebrew, I've come to the conclusion that I think that there is prophetic fulfillment. But I don't think it's an argument that's particularly illuminating to have in a forum like this because, number one, I admit it's criteria that people disagree on, right? So you're going to say Jesus didn't fulfill prophecy. Many Christians will say Jesus did fulfill prophecy. I'm happy to say, look, at least everyone can agree it's not a good yardstick. So if I would never argue that somebody should make that their linchpin. Although having said that, I personally believe that Jesus did fulfill prophecy.
In the original context.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In the original context, yeah. We are getting pretty close to 3 hours, and so I want to open up the floor to Odin a little bit and make sure that we've answered Odin's question. And I'm sorry, Odin, I should have let you on sooner. But Darklight, I'm not booting you. You can stick around the chat, and we'll get to some closing statements fairly soon. But Odin, and by the way, Darklight, I'm enjoying this conversation, and I hope we have more conversations like this. You're clearly a very intelligent and very thoughtful guy, and I hope we talk more about this.
Well, I know I'm defiant, but at least I'm being respectful and not interrupting you, unlike the last couple of people who was defiant. So, I mean, there's that.
Dr. Kurt. Yeah. Well, let's stick around, Darklight, because we'll let you have a closing statement in just a couple of minutes. But let's give it over to Odin and just say, hey, what's up, Odin?
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Good to see you, Odin.
What's up, man?
Oh man, there is so much to comment on. I don't think you got enough time available for me. But I did find Dr. Kurt's Substack. So I am going to be looking at I guess whatever arguments he's made against God, and of course my goal is going to be to deconstruct the whole thing and see how it actually works. But in terms of you, Tavo, so I do have I think I asked you this question before, but I never, at least I didn't feel as if I got a full answer because I'm always on late. Um, so you make the argument that more recent theologians and thinkers, and when I say more recent, I mean more so closer to a couple of years after Christ, they look at the Old Testament as allegory. Now, when you say the Old Testament, do you mean Genesis and Exodus? Do you mean like the Torah, or do you mean the Tanakh?
You know, I mean, I think that every part of the this is really funny from on day 3. You'll get me off that fence pretty soon on day 3, I believe. Anyways,
Well, I mean, day 3, we gotta team up, man. We gotta get them to stop saying the Old Testament is allegory, man.
No, and you're right, Odin, and I probably shouldn't say that. And here's the reason why: is because every story, every book, sometimes every passage has its own purpose, right?
Yes.
So it is too simplistic to say this is just all allegory. And I've probably been excessively glib on that at some point. But there's a lot of parts of the Old Testament. There's historical narratives that are probably real, right? There are lots of things that are there, I think, for moralistic reasons. Right? I think the book of Job is there for specific moral reasons. There's also a lot of imprecatory poetry, right? Blessings and curses. Those things flow freely. Let me just say one thing that you said about Dr. Kurt. I would encourage everyone to check out his Substack, but I would remind people, do as he does, not as he says. In other words, I think he would freely admit that I live rent free in his head. He's written. I think he would admit that he's written the equivalent. Look, he has written the equivalent of an entire textbook about the CTF argument. He's written something like 75,000 words about my arguments. So I'm giving you a hard time because Dr. Kurt's still here, but I think here's the point: he's writing about the CTF argument. If it were a flimsy or easily dismissed argument, or was not worthy of engagement, I think he would have dismissed it with far fewer words. Oscar just joined, but Oscar, we are probably not going to be able to get to you because we're getting close to 3 hours, and I would love to. I'd love to have you on in the future, but I think we probably won't get on to you today, if that's okay, Oscar. I apologize though, but please do call in. We're live every Monday 5 p.m. Next Monday at 5 p.m. I'm going to be shorter because I do have an appointment in the evening that I have to get to. But
Tavo's got a date. All right.
Maybe. Okay.
So the reason why I ask you that question is because depending on if you view the Old Testament, and I mean any book really, as allegory, where it's not like explicitly stating that, hey, or implying that, whatever that's here is allegory, you run into a host of theological issues later on. And so it's important to understand that, like, Christianity is, for all intents and purposes, a fulfillment of Judaism. And to some extent, I feel somewhat perplexed because I think that when we say these experiences that these people have that have been recorded are essentially allegory, right? We have the whole Jewish culture and identity that is grounded in what was recorded by their forefathers. And to kind of like, put it in that category to say that it's allegory, a lot of people are going to read that as saying it wasn't really real. They were just kind of like stories made up to, create some kind of history so they have like a sense of belonging, or like for like moral sensibilities and stuff like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I should be circumspect when I make statements like that. You know, I think that there's a lot of things in the Bible that are meant to be historical. I think there's, you know, I mean, like I think that there's a reasonable case to say that there was probably some large scale flood that happened. I don't know that I would argue that, you know, I don't think the evidence is very good that there was a global flood, but I mean, I think it's okay to say that, you know, there was probably
Yeah.
some flood thing that happened.
So, because I'll give you an example. I argued today with a young Earth. Well, I don't necessarily think he was a young Earth creator. He called himself uh, a non-denominational heretic, and essentially what he was saying was that the flood story is it cannot be real, mainly because we have evidence that the world wasn't flooded, and so therefore it's just pure allegory. So I'm like, well, you're kind of creating a false dichotomy here, right? There are other explanations that exist, and you should take them into consideration. And you know, essentially, long story short, I had to do like a linguistic comparison, right? Where in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, to denote totality, the writer uses the heavens and the earth. He uses opposites, right? And in the form that he, or the linguistic tool he used, was a merism, or merism, depending on how you pronounce it, where you kind of use opposites to denote the totality of of whatever the subject is, right? So kind of like, you know, if you were to say the whole land is covered by plants from east to west, right? You're referring to like literally all of the land, right? That's what you're saying. And so the heavens and the earth, it's referring to the totality of everything, because they didn't have a word for universe back then. Now, the key word here is eretz, which is ERETS, and you have Haaretz, which is HA'ARTS, right? One says earth, one says the earth. Now, what's fascinating is that when you look into Genesis chapter 6, throughout the whole book, you do see Ha-Haaretz used, right? And so you could read that as saying, hey, well, you know, he used Ha-Haaretz was used, so therefore he meant the whole world. But wait a minute, that's not the case. When you look at the text carefully, right, and you look at other usages in Genesis, you'll see that it's talking about the region. Why? Because there were no linguistic tools that was used to denote the totality of the whole planet.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good. I mean, that's a reasonable argument. Yeah.
That's just one of the arguments. There's a few
Yeah.
of them, but I'm just saying, like, you know, I did use the Mesopotamian flood narrative, and there is some evidence that indicated that there was a regional flood in that area, right? And so it's clear that there was some shared story. If you look at, for example, the Book of the Giants, the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll see that back then they acknowledge that particular flood situation. Gilgamesh was mentioned amongst, you know, the entities back then. Some of the rabbis wrote stuff saying that he clung to Noah's boat. That's how he survived, right? So like you see a lot of these writings that are available, that when you take a cumulative approach to these things, you can come up with good explanations. You don't have to write them off as being allegories. And I recommend doing that, because if it's a situation where you want to have conversations with people about theology, right? An astute person is going, once you say, hey, this is uses, if you see this as allegory, they're going to use that to pick you apart, essentially.
Yeah, okay, that's a reasonable consideration. We are right at 3 hours, so I'll probably like wind things down. But let's go to closing statements. And if you haven't all already done this, please like put your channels in the private chat, and I'll make sure that I flag all of you when you
I would like your advice. I just have a question to ask you after the stream is done.
Yeah,
So I would just
I'll
like
hang
your
out after the
advice.
stream. Yeah, because I owe you a call, Odin. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do closing statements. Max, you want to kick it off?
Well, I would say I appreciate earlier when you cited the Brickman study that you were very careful about how much you were trying to claim. I know I've been annoyed with you in the past about that, but you seem much more careful about what you were willing to claim from that study.
Well, having said that, I was already aware that there was some overreach in how that study gets quoted. But thank you for noticing that. I do try to be circumspect when I know that there's overreach. Yeah.
And I just want to say something. I know earlier you were talking, I think it was with Kurt, about the benefits of, religious people are happier and healthier and stuff. And there seemed to be some debate about whether it applied to other religions than Christianity. And I think the Pew Research shows some evidence in countries like Japan and Singapore and Taiwan. These are not Christian majority countries. They seem to have a similar effect in terms of benefits.
Yeah. I mean, all the studies that I'm familiar with have been done in Christian majority nations, but I'll stipulate that, like I said, no sociologist would ever do a head-to-head comparison. But these are very large epidemiological studies. So when we try to control for individual variables, it becomes very fraught. But I will say that when we look at Muslim majority countries, the literature is much harder to reproduce.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. I'm just saying there's another data point that at least in East Asia, there seems to be some evidence of a similar. But I realize it's also limited what I'm looking at. But it's just another point to consider in that.
I think my bigger point was, discernibility. Is it like, are we really like Dr. Kurt was saying, like, is God discernible is part of the first premise. And I think that doing that without having a yardstick for what discernibility means leaves it open. Then people are going to bring their own yardsticks. And then atheists are going to say, well, here's my yardstick for atheism, and hold it against the discernibility argument. And then and Christians are going to go the other way. But I don't mean to cut you off so much. We're kind of in closing statements. So go ahead.
Yeah, just wrapping up. Just something to think about. But I realize what I was bringing up isn't like completely definitive either. But it's another point to think about in the larger picture.
Yeah. What are you working on, Max? You got stuff that you want to tell us about?
I'm not doing much. I'm just enjoying my summer. I mean, in the fall, I'm going to be back to school. I found out I'm going to be placed in a hospital once a week to get clinical experience.
What are you going to be studying, Max?
I'm in nursing right now, but I have to do practical once a week in a hospital. So it's going to be
wonderful.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, congratulations. I hope you'll share your journey with us as that goes on.
I'll probably be pretty busy, but maybe I'll stop in like once a month instead of every week when I'm in school.
Well, your contribution here is very valued.
Yeah, well, thanks. I guess that's pretty much all I had to say, though. Yeah, it was an interesting guest today, though, I'll say.
Quite, yeah. I really enjoyed it. All right, Adrian, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Tavo, for having me up. Definitely was a good engagement with the guests that y'all have. Just to let y'all know, if y'all want to join me on Wednesday, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we are back on the NKJV Total Chain referencing. Next topic we're going to talk about is idolatry. Last week was apostasy. And then we're going to read James 5 on Thursday, Lord willing, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in the ESV translation. And I'm still deciding on the study Bible material for that. So getting that Bible, y'all.
I will try to join you Wednesday at 5 to 7. I will try to be there, Adrian. Yeah. And thanks for what you do on your channel. It's really fantastic. I've checked out a few of your videos over the last few days. It's really great. People subscribe to Adrian's channel. If mods, if you want to put his channel up, do that. I'll tag you in the description of the video, and for sure, and then people check it out.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, Odin, what you got? Oh, I guess Jay just rejoined, so I'll add up Jay. But this is the same Jay who was on here earlier, right? We're kind of just doing closing statements / wrap up. But go ahead, Odin.
Well, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to do these types of streams to kind of get people to come up and engage your position. Because one of the things that I believe that every person of faith needs to do is to engage their faith on a individual personal level and have others engage it. So I kind of look at it as a sanity check, right? Like, do I have good reasons for holding this position? Not that I'm saying one needs to have good reasons per se, but I think it's a good idea to hold positions for good reasons.
Adrian, can you put your channel in the private comments? Because
Yeah.
Adrian Bible and Beats. Yeah, cool. Yeah. What are you here? Let me make you a mod, Adrian, and that way you can put your channel in the group chat. Add as
Adrian's the
moderator.
cool kid. But yeah, man, I definitely appreciate it.
You're a mod now, so you can copy your link to the channel. Yeah, go ahead, Odin. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. But yeah, in terms of what I'm working on, I am finishing up a bunch of papers, and I think for 3 of them, I'm actually going to see if I can submit them to some philosophy journals for review. They'll get torn apart, of course, but the goal is to at least put something out there so that believers would be able to have different approaches to different challenges. And I believe that some of the things that I will be sharing are novel, and I think we need more options when it comes to apologetics and people maintaining their faith ultimately. So that's kind of what I'm working on a personal level. No channel yet for these types of conversations. I am kind of working through some other personal stuff right now that's taken up a lot of my time and these papers. So nothing on that yet, but you will all know whenever I do decide to set up something.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'll stay on after Odin, and we'll chat some more. All right, Darklight, what you got?
I would like to point out that interrupting people is a sign of weakness, and I would like to implore anyone listening, anytime you go on a show, that really makes you look weak. And I'm directly talking to the people that was on earlier, that was constantly interrupting. Whenever you're interrupting someone, you are quietly declaring that you are so threatened by what that person might say that you can't let them get it out. So I'll just implore people to consider that. And it's actually a sign of strength and confidence to let people state their points fully without constantly interjecting on them.
Wise words. Wise words.
That's one thing. And another thing is, so what followers of Abraham usually ask me is, because I am a true monotheist, so they ask me, so what is the name of God? And to that I say, every single word ever spoken and every single name ever spoken is the word and name of the actual one true creator. For there is no word or name possible to be spoken without the breath of life which empowers it, for one. So with that, I claim a naturalistic omni-relational monism, essentially, is what my book is based off of. My book is called Darklightism, the Theology and the Theory for Human Ascension, a Unified Duality Ontology. And I'm pretty much providing a bridge between atheism and theism by promoting a God concept that is naturalistic. And I had something else, but it slipped me, but that's good enough right now. I do appreciate you having me on, because there's a lot of different types of rooms out there, and they are not all interested in engaging in intellectual, honest conversations. They're trying to clip farm in one way or another, because I interact with a lot of different theists, a lot of atheists, you know, I usually enjoy hanging out with the atheists. Actually, you'll find me more in the atheist channels than the theist channels. So I appreciate you having me on, and I apologize for cussing in the chat, but after getting banned a couple times, I got a little pissed. It happens, but so I do apologize, and I do appreciate you trying to have civil conversation. And even though we may disagree heavily on a bunch of stuff, how you go about your disagreements says a lot, you know, which is something that you see me and objective ethics, we disagree on a lot of things too, but we can interact in a very civil manner and actually have productive conversations around it. So I appreciate it, y'all.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I really genuinely mean it when I say that I hope we chat again. I'd really love that. All right, Jay, any closing words?
Yes, actually, I remember you were having a conversation earlier about suffering. It was an interesting question because you were saying why, if God is a myth of God, whatever you said, why would God allow people to suffer? But my thing is, isn't that because people gave up the truth for a lie while they're suffering? You know what I'm saying?
Say more. Oh, and Darklight, I didn't get to tell you this, but really cute dog. That was a cute puppy. Man, that's the cutest thing we've had on this channel so far.
No?
All right, go ahead, Jay. Well, so can you explain what you're saying? People gave up truth for a lie.
I don't know if you can hear me or you're replying. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you can't hear me now? Can you hear me, Jay? Okay, I think you've lost the audio, Jay. I'm sorry. I didn't. That's not anything I did. I apologize.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jay, but I think you can't hear us.
So, with my point, when they say God allows people to suffer, I just don't understand that saying. And to me, when someone say that, it's only because they have not found the way. Because Jesus came, he showed us the way, and he told us that the way that seems right to man is wrong. Along those scripture, I don't fully remember scripture. I don't read the Bible every day to remember it.
No,
But simply he was saying, on this earth, people, there still be broken bones, people will still suffer, people will have heartbroken or heartbreaks. But he came to make a way for us which is not of this world. Right. So when I hear anyone say why God allows us to suffer, why people are born with these conditions, that's because they identify with the physical sense and not the spiritual. They're not spiritual. That's what I would get from what they're saying. Because he came to preach the word to the poor, to the blind, to whatever else he said during those verses. And he said, who have ears to hear, let them hear. So it just tells me they didn't receive his message. They don't know what he was saying. And because of that, they're going to blame him. And really, he has nothing to do with it because he made a way for us to get to him. There's a way made. A lot of people just haven't found it and have not seen it. So that's why
well said, Jay. I think
they're in the suffering and stage of life that they're in. God is not doing it to them; they're doing it to themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really well said.
That's my closing statement, I would say.
I think that's really well said, Jay. All right, well, I'm going to stop there. I'll forego a closing statement, but just advice, keep conversing, keep talking to me.
I can't hear you talking. It's weird.
Yeah, I think it's your audio, Jay, that went out. Yeah, I think Jay's audio went out. All right, I'm gonna mute you, Jay, just so I can make a quick closing statement. But just a reminder: keep talking to me, keep talking to each other, keep making connections with each other. Stay epistemically humble and stay open to conversation. And if you stopped learning, then what's even the point of any of this grand theater that we're all in? All right, I'm going to stop there, but I really hope that you all have a really wonderful. Oh, Hotep wants to hop up. Yeah, sure, Hotep, you can come up. I'm going to stop the stream right after you come up. But that's okay. We won't be live anymore, but I'm happy to talk a little bit more. All right. Good to see you all. And I hope you all have a really wonderful evening.
God bless. Like and subscribe to Dr. Tavo's, y'all. All
And to
right.
Adrian. And to Adrian. You guys are all going to be linked on this. All right. And Hotep, if you want to jump up, I'll end the stream, but you feel free to use the link and you can hop up.